Live from the Donatorium, it's the Fat Minute. I'm joined tonight by my co-host, the president of the Hair Club for Men, BVJ.
Hello.
I'm also joined tonight by special guest, Lord Regent of Zimbabwe, Zack Kogel.
That's my title. Wow.
And I am, of course, Don John, the man who sold the world. It's also a special episode tonight because a certain co-host of ours, is celebrating a birthday today.
Oh,
It's
my
me.
puppy getting older.
Yep.
How's your birthday been today so far, Blake?
I mean, it was just very relaxed and chill, you know. I just hung out with my
smooches.
I just hung out with my daughter all day, and
Okay.
God bless.
Gabby worked, and so we just celebrated my birthday yesterday, really.
Yeah.
So
I got...
no, it was really all you ask for later, and when you're not a teenager anymore, you just want to have a relaxing day.
I feel that.
Yeah,
So,
no,
yeah.
I get that.
All right,
Yeah.
well,
Vibing.
let's move into the podcast tonight, boys. Continuing with our
Let's
retrospective.
get to the dirty nitty gritty of it.
Hell yeah.
Hey, I wasn't even trying to be funny. I'm just saying, let's go.
Well, then let the motherfucking host do his thing.
Hey, language.
Okay, sorry.
No cussing on my Christian Minecraft server.
Oh, I got some bad news.
My man.
All right, so we're continuing with our retrospective of the decade of the 2000s. We're moving on to the year 2003, and we're going to start off with some cultural events that happened that year. First thing, we'll start off with a fun one. The Order of the Phoenix book release happened in 2003. Now, we had sort of touched on this in the first episode when we kind of talked about, Pottermania at the time. And this was a big fucking deal. This was a big fucking year for that. Yeah, because, I mean, keep in mind, Goblet of Fire came out in 2000. And up to that point, there had been a new Harry Potter book every single year up until Goblet of Fire. Then there was just a huge break for 3 years, no Harry Potter book. But the Sorcerer's Stone and the Chamber of Secrets movies came out, which just fanned the flames of that popularity. And then the Prisoner of Azkaban movie was like a year away at this point. So people like because I remember at the time there were some jokes about like basically the manga catching up to the anime in terms of Harry Potter because they're about to hit.
Please don't use that analogy.
Because they were about to hit movie 3 and only 4 books were out. So I remember when that 5th book was announced, like it was national fucking news, and I think it really says something that because there was a midnight release for this book nationwide. And I remember going to the midnight release, waiting in line at our local bookstore here at our mall. And I remember the line being out the fucking door. I didn't get home until like 2 a.m. and I still like stayed up and read the first couple chapters afterwards. And I think
I did the same thing too, actually.
I think it really says something when, at a time when literally every single kid had at least one video game console in their house, and yet they still were okay with waiting in line at midnight for a book that was almost 1,000 fucking pages long. I think that really says something about how popular this book series was.
At the time it was pretty groundbreaking.
Yeah. So, Blake, what do you got to say about that?
Well, at this point, like I told you a couple episodes ago, I only read the first book. But yeah, no, I remember like you said, like this was the first one, and how long did you say?
3 years.
3 years, yeah. So that was a big deal. I remember it was a big deal when like the title was announced.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I specifically remember, and this goes into a legend, a lore, if you will, about how everybody went to school with that one kid that just made up shit.
Yeah.
Oh dear God.
And I remember a classmate of mine, William. I asked him, so what does the title mean, Order of the Phoenix? And he just totally just pulled some shit out of his ass. Just like, well, you see, it ends with them going to like the wizard god who happens to take the form of a phoenix, and he orders
your allegiance to him.
and he orders for and then everyone takes a name. But anyway, and he orders for he who shall not be named to be killed. And so the Order of the Phoenix is the wizard god asking Harry Potter to kill Lord Voldemort.
Wait, hold on. Is this the Crusades or is this Harry Potter?
Yeah, so there you go.
All right, Zach. Zach, what you got to say?
The big thing about the Order of the Phoenix that I remember, or at least the Harry Potter book series as a whole, was my family had a bit of a tradition, I guess you could call it, where my mom liked the books. She more so liked the fact that we liked the books.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad was one of those people who, if he walks in and catches like a glimpse of the page, or he hears someone reading it, he'll just sit down and listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we had already watched the movies by then. Like pretty much every family across this great nation of ours. I'm sorry, I can't say that with a straight face. Anyway, but more importantly, everyone always had a type of movie night. I'm assuming. Is that something everyone does? Yeah. But we would always watch the first Harry Potter movie and the second Harry Potter movie. It got to the point where I could say the lines of the first Harry Potter movie along with the movie. My mom would get mad at me. But I digress. My mom made it a tradition, getting back on topic, that when the book would come out, we would go to the midnight release. We would get it. We would celebrate. We would celebrate by reading the first chapter, and by reading it, my mom would read it aloud to all of us. It was almost like great storyteller of old sitting around the campfire spinning tales of dragons and shit. And quite frankly, that was oddly accurate. But we would go out on picnics and we would finish as many chapters as possible. That kind of thing. It sounds very idyllic, but quite frankly, there was a lot of frustration of, what happens next? Well, you're going to find out later. But we want to find out now. Packs up basket. I said we're going to find out later. All right, fine. Jeez. Shit. But, yeah, I have a lot of fond memories of the books, mainly because it was a family tradition that, we would all sit down as a family. My mom would read it to the family, and, we would just kind of bond over that. Movies were kind of the same way, except my mom wouldn't read the script, line for line.
Yeah.
Well, what a nice, wholesome story. I wish my parents loved me that much.
Oh yeah, no, it won't. I think that's about as wholesome as it'll get tonight.
I thought that was going in a completely different direction. I wish my parents loved me that much. They don't. Oh man.
All right, next.
Yeah, no, it really shows the staying power of a brand where you leave people hanging for about, you said 3 years.
Yeah.
And then they line up at the doors at midnight to get your book.
Yeah.
A
It's
book.
crazy stuff.
Book. Has there been another book, another series that has done that since? Like, did the Hunger Games even do that?
Not to my knowledge. The only other book I can think
Twilight.
of. Did Twilight books have a midnight release?
Yes, it was not like Pottermania, if I'm not mistaken, but it was comparable to where it would probably place second.
Yeah,
to its legacy, I guess you could
Because
say.
the only other book that comes to mind that also had a midnight release was with the Cursed Son screenplay, which was atrocious, if we're being honest.
I don't count it canon because it doesn't have a movie, and
that's the BVJ way of judging a book. I don't count it because it doesn't have a movie.
all y'all were gonna hate me because when you said did another book aspire to that kind of reputation, I was about to digitally look y'all right in the face and say Artemis Fowl.
I heard that Disney Plus movie is dog shit.
Well, it's Disney Plus.
All right.
They're not Netflix.
But yeah, I mean, I guess like give the devil his due, and that isn't me being like an obnoxious Twilight hater, but I mean like the Twilight books, like those had some hype.
Yeah.
Oh, they had a lot of hype.
But yeah, I remember when the final one was coming out. I think there was a midnight for it, and so yeah. Back to you, Donnie.
Well, let's move on to our next event of the year 2003, the Space Shuttle Columbia disaster, which was an incident when I didn't know that was funny.
No, I'm only laughing because I'm remembering what I said a few minutes ago. Listen, guys, that's about as wholesome as it's going to get. It's only downhill from here.
Yeah.
Lo and behold, the next topic.
This is the heavy part of the podcast. But the Space Shuttle Columbia disaster was an incident when the Space Shuttle Columbia basically just fell apart and burst into flames upon re-entry into the atmosphere, killing all 7 crew members on board. And I brought this event up just because for starters, I just remember that being on the news like very vividly as a kid. And also, I feel like, looking back, I feel like this disaster is what really killed, our interest in space exploration and, space technology. Like, we're starting to see a little bit of a resurgence of it, now in the past couple years.
As it's getting defunded.
Right.
Well, joy.
But I feel like this really killed a lot of interest in that, which is a shame because, I feel like if we were to, fund that kind of technology and exploration, we would progress so much more as a species and as a planet. I mean, it really is the final frontier.
Yeah, amen.
But, yeah, I definitely feel like this really killed our interest in space up until, the past couple years. What do you guys remember this or have any thoughts on this?
Well, I'll say from my half, initially, as I was looking at some of the things you guys sent me to, jog my memory so I could get ready for this podcast, when I saw that on the first part of the docket, I went, oh, wow, that was 2000. Damn. And then I really like kind of dug deep in my memory, my brain palace and shit. I remember I only heard about it once or twice, but then again, 9 times out of 10, I had my head buried in like video games and like all kinds of other shit. So, like I don't think it had enough impact on me because I always distanced myself from the news. Not because I was one of those people who like don't trust the news. Quite frankly, I wasn't old enough to be that way. But for me, it was always like there was always something depressing or scary on the news. I'll probably get into a little bit deeper than that on I'll probably elaborate a little more when we get further down the line because there's another topic that pretty much plays into that. But so I'll let Blake take the floor.
All right.
This was an event that like was completely wiped from my memory for some reason.
Mandela effect.
Well, I as far as like something like this goes, I specifically remember the one similar incident that happened before I was even born. The one shuttle disaster that happened. Yeah, that happened, during Ronald Reagan. Like I remember that was a thing. Mm-hmm. And there was like, as I was growing up, they were finally making made-for-TV movies on it and stuff. So yeah, this was an event that was completely wiped from my memory. It just sucks because something like this like is supposed to be hopeful and inspirational and uplifting. And when you have, you can have 100 mission accomplished, whatever, but you have one of these and it just kind of taints the whole thing almost. And then as far as like the resurgence of interest in space exploration, it's also really weird how NASA is like a brand now. Like even last year, like I was at the mall and there would be like teenagers and college age guys who were like cool guys, not nerdy guys at all. And they're wearing like NASA sweatpants and dad hats with the NASA logo on it and stuff. And like, it's like trying to be like the working man's Gucci. But yeah, it's just
Gucci for glasses. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, but however it has to come back, whatever. But yeah, it's just It's just kind of weird that it's going on like bomber jackets and stuff now. But whatever.
That is a really interesting point, because normally the way I always see like culture and how it kind of like evolves with certain aspects, certain themes, certain things in general. Whenever you take something that people weren't really using as a brand name, let's use NASA for example. Whenever I see it like plastered everywhere like that, my first thought is cool. That'll get other people interested in it. That'll get more, generalized public interest in it. And maybe they'll get more funding. Maybe they'll get more popularity. And then I realize it's literally just one man had it on a T-shirt, and one guy thought, that looked pretty cool. So they did it too. I'm sorry, my mouth was full of saliva and I had to swallow.
Was it Sylvester Stallone?
You know what? Sometimes it's a celebrity. It might have been Sylvester Stallone. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. But I had a lot of saliva in my mouth, and my mouth is so dry right now. I got this giant-ass glass of water right beside me. But,
yeah, that's pretty cool.
But yeah, like, I'm always... It's pretty cool. Agent. Give me my NASA jacket. I'm gonna rep the streets. I don't know. Is that what he does? Does he rep the streets? Is that what he does when he runs up that long ass set of stairs?
No, the streets rep him.
Yeah.
He reps the streets of Philly.
I mean, yeah. Hey, Philly. I was told it's always sunny. But getting back to what I was originally trying to say.
I hate you.
Hashtag Dayman. What I was always worried about was, yeah, people will see the NASA logo, that kind of thing, and be like, oh yeah, it looks cool, but do you really know what that is? Is it getting lost in translation, or do you really,
or do you just
get it?
Do you just think the font and aesthetic looks cool for your jacket?
Yeah, because that to me at least, because I'm a nerd. I grew up a nerd. Like when I was 2 years old, I watched Star Trek Next Generation, loved the shit out of it, had action figures, whole deal. But do you really know what that means? Is it getting lost on you? You're just wearing it because it looks cool?
What you're getting at is it's kind of like an alternate version of how you see that one dude or girl wearing a Nirvana T-shirt, and they've never listened to Nirvana. Yeah.
It also kind of falls under the same category as someone who says I like video games, and the first thing that pops out of their mouth is Zelda, and they may have played it once or twice, thought it was cool, and then they just say they're a fan of Zelda or something like that.
But
I'm treading some serious hipster territory, and I'm going to apologize for that ahead of time.
Right.
But when it comes to something like NASA, where it's this is our future, or this could be our future. Yeah. I mean, you gotta give it some semblance of seriousness, especially when we're talking about the original root of this conversation, which is people trying to further our future in a shuttlecraft, and then the whole thing having a mishap, and then they all die for the sake of furthering humanity's future.
I'll tell you one person who I know for sure who was wearing that NASA shirt that actually loved NASA for what it was that kid who got arrested for building a clock.
Oh yeah, 5 years ago.
I forgot all about that.
5 years ago, yeah. I mean,
talk about fucking irony.
I think, Zach, that's a very fair point with that. However, when it comes to video games and Zelda, keep in mind nobody likes a gatekeeper.
Oh no! I'm not saying that in any way, form, or fashion about gatekeeper. Quite frankly, if you like it, and for me at least, if you like it and I know that you kind of seem to fit into that category, that kind of person, I'm not going to dog you for it. I'm not going to dock you points or imaginary points or something for it.
I can firsthand give you my own, backstory with something like that. Was I finally wanted to have a Joy Division Unknown Pleasures T-shirt, that one thing that looks like sonic waves or the mountains of a Middle Earth map or whatever. It's all over Tumblr or whatever.
that 80s aesthetic T-shirt kind of thing.
Right. Yeah, the black and white T-shirt. So I kept seeing it, and I'm like, oh, that's such a cool T-shirt, but I've never. So I literally went home, listened to the entire album in one sitting, just so I can go back out and buy that T-shirt.
To be honest with you, I would probably have done the same, because I'm one of those people who I'd like to at least know the what is it called, the origin of where the damn thing came from. But
That's-
but
yeah.
to be fair, to wrap this all up in a nice little neat bow, to wrap it all up in a nice little neat bow, I'm kind of sad that, I bet you anything if you talk to a few other people other than, say, us who either did our research, did our emotional or mental digging to figure out and remember, hey, that did happen. Oh, that was sad. If you talk to anybody else, I don't really think they would remember.
No, maybe not.
And that's sad.
Yeah.
But,
Because,
and as far as the licensing and marketing and apparel, I basically just created my own headcanon that NASA's just selling T-shirts to fund their program now.
Oh, thank God I'm not the only one who just thought that.
Yeah, so I'm just like, oh, okay, they're just trying to sell as much clothing as possible so they can maybe go to Mars.
The bright side of it is at least they're getting the word out. At least they have their names still on people's lips. And at least that'll get in. Yeah. Hey, listen, you laugh, but that's a marketing strategy.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
let's move on to our next topic. We definitely got a little off the rails on that one.
Oh, yeah, no, we did.
Yeah, so let's bring it down to earth a little bit with the war in Darfur.
Oh, fuck.
Man, it just keeps getting brighter and brighter.
Yeah. So I brought this one up. The war in Darfur started in 2003 when multiple rebel groups in Darfur basically rebelled against the government, which they accused of oppressing the non-Arab population, which triggered a government-sanctioned ethnic cleansing of the country. And I just remember for so long Darfur being considered like the most dangerous place to be on Earth. I just remember.
Boy, did that change.
Yeah. But I just remember for several years, like almost pretty much throughout this entire decade and maybe a little past it, like that country being like considered the absolute most dangerous, hostile place to be in the world. I remember, if I'm not mistaken, I believe at one point the UN had pretty much like blockaded the whole country to keep like other people from going in.
People pull up to Darfur, authorities roll up, you don't want none of that shit.
Yeah.
Then they just turn around and leave.
I will say, though, I remember there's a website, I forget what it's called, but there's a website that just like is devoted to people who basically, like, those scam callers you get who are always like, the IRS are like coming after you unless you pay like $1,000.
I watch so many videos on scam baiters. I know exactly what you're talking about.
There's a website devoted to these people who like basically fuck with these scam callers. And I remember like there's one from like the mid 2000s where a dude basically for several months just fucked with the scam caller and got him to travel all the way to Darfur.
Wow.
That's commitment to the bit. But yeah,
Whew.
I just remember this conflict being in the news all the time. I remember this country being considered the most dangerous country in the world for so long. And I mean, to give you guys an idea of how like nasty and bloody this war is, less than a month ago they signed a peace agreement to this war. Less than a month ago.
What?
Less than a month ago a peace agreement was signed.
Whew.
So
That's...
Blake, what are your thoughts and memories on this?
It's amazing that it's still less than a month ago, but
it still ended before the War on Terror.
Yeah.
Terror.
Yeah. Zack, you go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was waiting on you, man.
I don't remember seeing much about this at the time. But then it just adds to the point that I keep bringing up how it's just like early 2000s. It just created how there always had to be something negative. And I mean, like, I don't want anyone to translate that wrong and be like, well, this is more than a news story. This was a real thing that happened. This was people's lives. But it
was an event in general.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was just, it was amazing how we were, or at least I was, I guess shielded from the negativity of the world as well as I was at the time, because there was just such a depleting amount of optimism and just good news in general.
Yeah.
But yet we compare it to what we're doing and going through today, and we're like, man, I'll go back to 2003. Give me that time machine.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that kind of dichotomy, when you live through one and you thought that was the end of the world, and then you get to now, and you're like, man, I'll handle that any time, any day of the week. In a way,
Yeah.
I didn't think I was going to go this way in this direction, but that's also kind of uplifting. That means you're going to live through it.
Hopefully,
And now, granted,
yeah.
I know that that's not as comforting to other people, maybe who did go through it.
Yeah.
But as far as the negativity goes and the feeling that it's never going to get better,
Yeah.
well, go back 10 years, find the worst thing that happened then, gauge your opinion on it,
Yeah.
think to yourself, would you go back and rather handle that than what you are now? Cool, you survived.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I gotta say.
All right. Zach, anything else you got to say?
To be honest with you, there is one thing on this list that I am saving. I'm basically going to condense it all because it kind of all relates to itself.
Okay, well then, on that note, I'll move on to the next event of 2003, the beginnings of the Iraq War, specifically the protests against the Iraq War. And I bring up the protests in particular because I remember when we first invaded Iraq in 2003, I remember seeing it on the news, seeing nothing but protests. Like,
Yeah.
not just here in the U.S., but literally the entire world. I remember seeing news coverage of very large protests in Europe, in Asia, in Africa, like so literally the entire world protesting the Iraq War. I even remember seeing researchers in fucking Antarctica protesting this war.
Yeah.
So it really says one thing, like, it's one thing when you have people in your own country protesting the government, because that's going to happen no matter what. But when you have the entire fucking world saying, you're full of shit, don't fucking do this, I mean, it really spoke volumes to just what kind of administration we had going on at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Zach, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm going to push a little farther than that, than not just the protests.
Mm-hmm.
Because, all right, I'm going to give you a little bit of a unique perspective here. Probably neither of you know this because, to be honest with you, with us being friends, we know each other, it never really came up. But I remember being that young, hearing about the Iraq War, hearing about possible chemical weapons. I remember being that young and hearing that there was going to be a chance that we were going to get bombed with mustard gas.
Yeah, I remember that.
And that it was a presidential suggestion to the populace of the U.S. to start stocking up on tarp and duct tape to make sure that your house is airtight just in case we get bombed with mustard gas. Let me tell you firsthand from someone who, lived through that specific era, what that does to a child at that age. Every day, my mind would go through the what I would call it'd be like battle simulations. Every day I would wake up and I would think to myself, if they hit us now, what would be my response time?
Yeah.
How fast could I get to the tarp? How fast could I get to the duct tape? I don't want to leave my things behind. So would there be a way for me to create some kind of umbilicus between my room and my parents' room? We're all going to have to hoard up here. How are we going to get food? Would there be a way to make a makeshift like gas mask or smock to be able to brave downstairs to get food? And I'm not going to lie. I think a lot of that, coupled with a few other things, contributed to my anxiety and depression. But I can clearly tell you that that kind of a situation on me at that point in time caused me to have such a paranoid and just negative and fearful view of the world. It wasn't good. It was not good.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think you were the only one who, was affected in that way. I mean, I think that's how
there's a lot of people who probably could vouch for that.
And I think that's a large reason why so many in this country fell in line with the Iraq War, just because of that fear.
Yeah.
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 For me, actually, was a very unique reaction, though. I will say. I will say one more thing. My reaction in total, though, was not so much they started it, we need to finish it. My response was the government actually started it. They're the ones who provoked everything.
Mm-hmm.
And we wouldn't be here if it wasn't because of them. So I guess in a way that was kind of what made me very distrustful of, government officials, government, slap government on the end of it, and I'm like, I don't know about that. But yeah, that pretty much summed up my slow boiling, I guess you could say, or slow brewing hatred
Mm-hmm.
of, government opinion, government decision,
Mm-hmm.
because I always have a feeling that they don't have my best interest at heart. I'm basically just fodder. If I die, I'm just a number. And it won't really make much of a difference. The best I can hope for is just a name on a plaque or a memorial, if they find me. That's what the kind of thing does to you.
Yeah. Blake, do you have anything to add?
Well, I remember. First of all, it was probably the Iraq War is probably the biggest mistake of our lifetime.
Understatement.
But it's it just. I remember being taken to a protest. My mom and sister and I went. We went to D.C. actually. And I don't know, because usually they try to have like a specific name,
Mm-hmm.
like the March for Our Lives, or the Women's March or whatever. I forget what the name of it was, but I mean it was a pretty decent turnout. It wasn't like the other two that I had just mentioned, but so I remember being taken to that, and I was scared being there because I guess kind of to relate to what Zachary was just saying, like to be a kid and to have that kind of worry or whatever, a kid shouldn't have to worry about that.
Mm-hmm.
No.
And it's like, and somebody could be like, well, then why were you taken there? That's not but it's like, I mean, you have to stand up for what you think is right. As long as it doesn't include you harming someone.
In fact, to bolster what you're saying, if someone actually did say you didn't have a right to be there, quite frankly, you would have had every right to be there, because it would have shown you that, one, not everyone has war in their hearts,
Right.
and wants bloodshed, and two, if you are against it, which I believe you were,
Yeah.
you weren't alone.
Yeah. And one of the more unfortunate things back home here while all that was going on, obviously the true misfortune was happening over there. One of the most unfortunate things here, other than, when our own soldiers had to come back and deal with life after, experiencing
PTSD,
that. Right, exactly.
All those
But
awful things.
what I'm getting is, the unfortunate thing for the people who stayed here and didn't go, whatever, it was this misunderstanding that went on for far too long, and it might even still be going on, is that so many people could not grasp the concept that you could be, just because you are against the war doesn't mean you don't support the troops.
Yeah.
It's actually quite the opposite. Your point is that you don't want them to be in a unnecessary or mishandled situation. You want them to be taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the more unfortunate things, is just this I guess this they couldn't, other people just didn't know how to separate the two.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, these the people who were pro-war were, in a way, and I believe a very disrespectful way, using the troops as like a metaphorical hostage.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that in itself is disrespectful to the troops.
Right. Well, that's called chicken hawks and armchair warriors and
Yeah.
stuff. And then while this was going on, I mean, and I think this is a relevant fact right now. Almost none of the senators or barely any of the congressmen had kids that were over there.
Yeah.
In fact,
they didn't care.
And I think I'm pretty sure this. I mean, I know he himself is the fact here, but as far as him, whether or not he was the only one or one of two or one of three, I don't know. I'm pretty sure the only senator that had a son that was over in Iraq was Joe Biden. He was the only senator that actually had a child that was in the service while that was going on. And then that just added to everyone. Well, I mean, that I guess that example, that situation was just why so many people are frustrated because, Dick Cheney didn't have anybody over there. George Bush didn't have a son who had to go over there. And that was part of just what made people so fed up with it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I finally land on one of the cultural things that I could actually talk more about. I guess making up for last episode, but I don't want to drag it on too long. So I guess I'll calmly cease there.
All right. Well, we'll move on to the next topic, which is very related: the fall of Baghdad and the capture of Saddam Hussein. I remember just waking up one morning and seeing on the news just all those people in Baghdad tearing down that statue of Saddam, and it was supposed to be like this bright, hopeful new age for the country. And, now we know that basically we just created a power vacuum and then just walked out. Shortly after that, we did capture Saddam Hussein and basically handed him over to the interim Iraqi government, where they put him on trial, not for, the 9/11 attacks or weapons of mass destruction that we claimed he was a part of, but for shit he did in the 80s. So, I mean, I just remember seeing...
Didn't they super hang him? Like, when I say hang somebody, it's like the literal gallows with the rope, and then you pull the lever and the door comes out. No, they tied his neck to a rope and then kicked him off a cliff. Isn't that what they did to him or something to the tune of it?
He had the trap door.
Oh, he did?
Yeah.
Oh. Huh.
But I just remember seeing all that on the news, and it was supposed to be this bright, hopeful new age for the country of Iraq. And that didn't happen. So what do you guys got to say about that? Zach?
I remember watching that, because I remember our teacher turned that on at the time. I forget where I was. I think it was in middle school. Maybe. I think that lines up with middle school a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be middle school.
And I remember watching it and going, well, okay, so...
What happens now?
Yeah, are we leaving? And then I heard a few days later, it's like, oh, hey, no, we're still going to stay there. And I'm like, why? It's that whole adage of the innocence of a child is so telling, or something to the tune of that. It was the fact that, I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, if it's that big of a deal and it's that much of a celebration, so we're done, right? Punch to the face, shake hands, walk away. I mean, that's pretty way too simplified, but you get the whole song and dance of that.
Yeah.
And that was not it. So that's why every time afterwards, people were like, oh, we did this, oh, we did that. The relevance and the weight behind what happened was lost on me more and more and more and more.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that was for everybody else too, because it was like, we saw the statue get tore down.
Mm-hmm.
We thought, okay, so is that the end of it, or are you just going to drag this out longer and longer to cause more bloodshed, or what, you got a few more barrels of oil to fill up?
Yeah.
Blake?
I mean, it's like, building on what Zach said, it just, you would have thought that would have been the end of it, but it just kept going. And then, yeah, it also just felt insulting to everybody that it did just keep going. And I don't want anyone else listening in on this to maybe take it the wrong way. He was not a good dude. Like,
No.
he was a bad person.
Yeah.
He did not deserve to have any authority or any leadership. He was
No.
a bad man.
Right.
But for us though, it was just such.
It didn't even feel like being on the winning side.
No.
Like, it didn't even feel like you were on the side. You were watching like a football game. You're not
No.
even associated with that team. Why does that win matter now?
Well, because, and also for me, it's like, by this point, I was like, hey, remember Osama bin Laden? Like,
Yeah.
what about that?
Yeah.
Like, what
Everybody
about
forgot
him?
about him for a couple of years.
Yeah.
They kept doing
And
the
I mean,
three-card Charlie on us.
And I mean, keep in mind, we did not, have a trial for Saddam Hussein or lock him up in our jail. That was not us.
Yeah.
We caught him and we immediately turned him over to another country
Right.
to try him and then execute him. So I mean,
Right.
if that says anything about, how full of shit we were on that whole deal.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm a little misguided. I will fully accept that, but I've always had the standing opinion that the U.S. is, in like the grand scheme of the world, is if you turned every country into like a representative, like an anthropomorphized person, like a cartoon character, the U.S. was the jock that had his glow up in high school and just can't seem to find a moment to relive that glory. And what I mean by that is, in both World War I and World War II, or at least from people's perspective, because I've I took those classes. I'm not an expert on it, but at least I know a few things. But in both of those, the U.S. had that moment of no, I don't want to get involved. Don't want to get involved. And the bully pushes him and goes, now I'm involved.
Yeah.
And they think, yeah, I was the decisive push that won the war. Now I'm going to go back and you're never going to bother me again. World War II comes along. I don't want to get involved. Push. Now I'm involved. And they keep thinking that they're these saviors that every time they meddle in someone's business, they walk away the hero. And now they try to do it again in the war in Iraq. And they're not the hero anymore. And they can't stand that. And that's always how it was always interpreted to me. Because as I was learning history, it seemed as though the American politicians who helped guide the military, I guess you could say it like that, I was always under the impression that they always wanted to keep up this air of heroicism that we are the American military. We will fight tyranny wherever we find it, and shout G.I. Joe outside of a Range Rover or some bullshit. But in actuality, we started out as a conscientious objector that was forced into fighting. We ended up being the villain who can't keep their nose in their own fucking business.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a pretty fair assessment, in all honesty.
It's definitely a brutally honest assessment that I think there's a lot of views that help with that. Is I don't know if I would say the term villain, because once again,
it's not so much a villain.
I'm always worried. I'm always worried about the people that, like, once again, don't understand you could be against this stuff, but you can still support, the average person that went over and served, because there's a very specific and sophisticated difference there.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly believe that the inability to see that difference is when they look at a person, they don't see a human being, or at least a lot of them. I won't speak for everybody, but my guess is that when they look at a soldier, they don't see the young kid they used to be from their mother's eyes. They don't see the supportive brother that they see from, the sister and or younger brother's eyes. They see this heroic soldier that's supposed to march off to war, and if you don't support the hero, then you're the villain. This has nothing to do with heroes and villains. This has to do with someone who didn't have to put on military gear and go into a desert hellhole and fight to make sure that this conflict ends. They didn't have to do any of this. They wanted to do it because they wanted to keep you safe. I understand, from my perspective, if someone was saying that to me, my response would be, I understand what it means to support the troops. It's to basically, in my opinion, look at them and say, you don't have to go over there. But I know if I tell you, you don't have to go over there, you're going to tell me, but I need to. And who am I to tell a hero running towards the fire not to go? That's where you're being called. Yeah. And the only thing I can hope and tell you is that you stay safe so that your family can actually enjoy your company when you get back.
Yeah.
Definitely a lot of interesting viewpoints and perspectives here tonight. But I think we covered the major news events pretty well. Let's move on to the fun part of the podcast.
Oh, thank God! I was so tired of getting serious.
Let's talk about some movies that came out in 2003.
Oh boy, my favorite.
Start off with Kangaroo Jack.
All right, not my favorite. Listen, if I have to hear a hip hop, the hippie to the hippie to the hip hop, I swear to God, I'm going to stab myself in the face.
I remember watching this fucking movie as a kid, right after it came out. I remember seeing, the commercials for this movie, and, first off, talk about a case of, fucking false advertising. They advertised this movie like the kangaroo was going to, talk the whole fucking movie, and basically
going to be the Bugs Bunny.
Yeah, he was going to be, the protagonist of the movie, kind of. And, he talks in one scene where after, the actual main character gets hit in the fucking head. And, he literally does nothing the entire movie. And also, I just love the story of how this was originally supposed to be, a really, R-rated, raunchy comedy, if I remember correctly.
Oh, yeah. What a waste.
Yeah, it ended up just being a really fucking stupid movie that I still have a weird, vivid memory of. And just, it was basically fucking the Master of Disguise from the previous year all over again. Just this is some fucking dog shit.
Honestly, I chalk that up to a movie that I was too poor to see when it came out, and I'm so glad I dodged that bullet.
That should be a whole category in and of itself. Movies that I was too poor to see when it came out, and I'm glad I was.
Oh, god damn.
There's a subcategory to that, and I have Blake to thank for its existence. It's movies that I was too poor to be able to see, but yet my friend got me in for free, and thank God he did.
Yeah.
Agent 47 was one of them. I'm time hopping.
Oh,
continue.
Fucking easy there, Roger Ebert.
Oof. Hey, when in the presence of Blake, one must at least criticize one movie.
Yeah.
All right, Blake.
It'll appease him.
Blake, tell us about
keeps him going.
Tell us about Kangaroo Jack, Blake.
So, yeah, it's probably one of the greatest. I mean, every time there's a YouTube video or an article on movies that had really bad false advertising or something to that flavor or form.
Poster child.
This movie's mentioned, and yeah, but in a weird way, it's the only reason why or how that movie would ever still be talked about.
Yeah.
Because if that wasn't in there, or the trailer was more honest or accurate, I guess accurate is the word here, the movie wouldn't even be brought up ever again. But the fact that it's able to be brought up as false advertising is funny. And so you thought you were gonna have I guess a Who Framed Roger Rabbit or a Howard the Duck type deal where the animal is the sidekick and the animal can talk and whatever. And it's just it's just a minute-long dream sequence or whatever.
I honestly would have accepted it had it have been they hallucinated on cactus juice.
But my thing is, like, if you want to see, talking kangaroos in a movie, watch The Warriors of Virtue.
Oh, you blessed saint! Thank you for dropping that reference.
Yeah. So, do you even know what I'm talking about there, Donnie?
No.
Okay. So you know what?
I had all the damn action figures.
I'm gonna get you. I'm gonna get you in on a deal here. I finished the last Airbender live action movie one day, and then you have to watch The Warriors of Virtue.
Okay.
Oh, that's really not fair of a trade.
You know what? I need to see Donnie's reaction to the fact that movie was a thing that happened.
Yeah, it's
but
not
anyway,
Mandela effect.
I digest. But yeah, it's just
digest.
But it's a shame. If Michael would be on this episode, he would tell you that the movie itself, the rest of the movie at least, actually isn't that bad. It's like a dumb buddy comedy that's not rated R to see as a teenager.
I just love the story of how it was originally supposed to be like an R-rated mob comedy, and they did a test screening of like the first rough cut, and like the only thing that got a positive response was the kangaroo scene, like the one kangaroo scene. So they were like, fuck it, we'll just make the whole movie based around that.
Yeah.
Listen, if you wanted to see a movie that had anything close to the semblance of that in general, and you wanted the, I guess, the sidekick, if you want to call him that, talk and actually talk and it not be just a dream sequence, just watch Paul.
I still haven't seen that one. But...
Neither have I, but I thought I'd drop the name anyway.
Hi, I'm Paul.
Wrong Paul, but you get credit for trying.
Oh, man.
Zach, you got anything to add?
No, I barely watched it. Like I said, it was a movie I was too poor to see, and I was so glad I was. Dodged that bullet. But hey, real quick, Blake, how many tubs of popcorn do you give it?
I give it one tub of popcorn, but it was filled by the kid wearing a half-used Band-Aid and he had a cold.
I was gonna say, what do you give it, like a tub of popcorn, but the tub is empty and it's just the kernels at the bottom?
I give it an empty tub with some kernels at the bottom. And it was sneezed on by the neighborhood kid that wasn't vaccinated.
And a flat soda. Got it. All right, next movie.
All right, well, Zach, you said you were too poor to see Kangaroo Zach. Kangaroo Zach.
You know what? You caught me. I was the kangaroo all along. I was just really lazy and didn't want to act.
Maybe the real kangaroo was the friends we made along the way.
Along the way. All right, next movie. I don't have time for this.
Let me try that joke again. Zach, you may have been too poor to see Kangaroo Jack, but let's move on to a movie about a guy who can't see any movie, Daredevil.
Oh, thank you so much. I was like, please make this a blind joke for Daredevil. God bless him. No, but Daredevil would kick your ass just straight up in a fight.
Not if I bang on the trash cans really loud.
Yeah, but then eventually you'll have to Poot at some point, and he'll see it through the damn ether.
What? What?
He'll just teleport you. He'll just teleport behind you and be like, he'll just teleport behind you and be like, your vapors betray you, my son. Nothing personal, kid.
Oh my god. I'm fucking going to bed. Y'all can do this fucking podcast yourselves.
Hey, you know what, man? That's all good. I carried a team on my back.
I'm still trying to like digest whatever you did to Poot through the ether.
Well, according to the rest of the story, Blake, if you haven't been paying attention, it already has been digested. It was a Poot, and he saw it. Now, let's continue. Daredevil.
Daredevil, starring Ben Affleck. This movie has gotten not a lot of shit, but it's gotten shit over the years.
It's gotten a lot of shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has.
Comparatively to a lot of other movies, not a lot, but it has gotten its fair share of shit. And I remember watching this movie when it came out and thinking, like, it was actually pretty good. Like, I know the director's cut is much, much better, but even the
I own it, and it is good.
Even the theatrical cut is a decently solid movie. Like, I still to this day don't understand why it's shit on so much. I mean, it's got its goofy moments. Like, Bullseye's just a fucking stupid character in general, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
But,
and especially, like, Colin Farrell. Like,
Mockery.
No, hold on. A Daredevil movie with Colin Mockery as Daredevil sounds pretty fucking dope.
It has to have Ryan Stiles, or I'm not buying a ticket.
He's Kingpin. But anyway.
Welcome to Daredevil, where the points are made up and nothing matters.
But, yeah, like, Bullseye's kind of stupid to begin with, but somehow this movie made him even dumber by making him look like he was in Judas Priest.
Worse. It looks like he was a skinhead who tripped and fell at his local bar and hit his head off the gas stove.
No, it looks like he was punched in the forehead by Rick James with another ring.
Listen, no, we saved the Dave Chappelle stuff for later. That will come later, and I'm waiting with bated breath.
Oh, don't worry, Pookie, we'll get there. But fucking Michael Clark Duncan as Kingpin was fucking awesome in this movie.
I actually liked him as Kingpin.
Yeah,
to be honest, I like I forget what his name is. Damn it,
Vincent D'Onofrio?
I had it and I lost it. Yeah, I love D'Onofrio. 100% is the Kingpin in the Netflix adaptation, but obviously back then didn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
That was a really good Kingpin.
Yeah,
that was objectively a good Kingpin. How are you going to turn your nose up at that?
We need to establish that Michael Clark Duncan, in general, as much as he was appreciated, was still underappreciated.
Oh yeah.
Because I mean, like, is fucking as shitty as the Ryan Reynolds Green Lantern movie was. He did the voice of Kilowog, and he was like, as soon as they announced Michael Clark Duncan was going to voice Kilowog, I'm like, there's literally no one else they could have done that would have been better than that.
Yep, I'm sold. Take my money. I know I'll regret it later, but at least take some of my money.
Yeah.
Despite how much shit this movie's gotten over the years, I remember, like, it being a pretty solid movie. I mean, like, granted, that fucking music video for Evanescence with Jennifer Garner midway through the movie that's pretty fucking silly. But, like...
Yeah.
That was the only cringe moment for me as a kid.
Yeah.
I mean, even as a kid, before cringe was coined as a term,
yeah,
that was where I was like, please pick another song. This feels weird.
Just cut this scene. Just fuck that shit.
Okay, I'll wait my turn. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, like, I was just going to reiterate, like, I remember it being a pretty solid movie. I was always a little upset it never got a sequel. But, Blake, go ahead.
Well, Evanescence falls into this weird, like, gray area for me, and it's a well, I guess this is going to sound like an oxymoron. It's a negative gray area where, like, there was stuff I liked at the time that I liked it enough at the time, and as I got older, I was like, that's really corny.
Yeah.
And then there's stuff that I wasn't into as much at the time. Not saying that I wasn't into it at all or I disliked it, but I wasn't into it at all, and I grew to like it more. Like, now, like, I have an appreciation for, like, Fallout. Did somebody get broken into?
No,
yeah, that wasn't me.
My clumsy-ass dog was sleeping under the table, and he knocked a chair over.
My bad.
Oh,
but
God
anyway,
bless him.
like, I have a, I guess, strengthened appreciation for Fallout Boy and Panic at the Disco, more in other bands like that, more so than I did at the time. Like, whether it was 2003, 2013, or 2000 now, like, Evanescence does not do it for me. Like,
yeah.
I'm just like, no.
Yeah.
But then as far as the movie itself, like, I didn't dislike it when I saw it that one time in theaters. I can say that. And it's like, as a 12-year-old going on 13-year-old kid, like, it served its purpose in that right. It was entertaining to go to the theaters for 2 hours, and I went home and I moved on with my life. But, like, I will say, though, I wasn't like, oh man, I can't wait to own that like I did with like X3 or X2. I'm sorry, X2, X-Men United, or the first two Spider-Man movies. But and yeah, I hear the director's cut is better. And Kogo, I'll let you talk about that since you actually have seen it. But Michael agrees like the director's cut's better. And before I give it off to you, Kogo, there's like something about a subplot featuring Coolio.
Zack?
Sorry, headphones died. I had to plug them in. That was my B.
You good?
Yeah, I'm good. I moved and immediately unplugged it again.
Okay.
This is how the world works.
Um,
Anyway, so I was listening up until a point. I heard the word Coolio. Did I hallucinate?
No, yeah, there's something about a subplot in the director's cut with Coolio.
Julio. Yeah, right.
No, not Julio, not Bruno Mars's friend.
It's the part of the movie where he doesn't get the stretch, and they have to go make sure he does. Okay. I will say this is going to be a bit of a. I'm going to have to coin the phrase. This is going to be the sad hand job of an answer. I did watch it. I do own it. I haven't watched it in a long time.
Okay.
However, I do remember that there was a lot more oomph to it because I remember comparing it to when I watched it, I think in theaters. Yeah, I think I saw it in theaters. Yeah. I compared it to no. Back in the day, I rented it from Blockbuster.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah, boy. Shout out to Blockbuster, guys. Y'all still around? Yeah. Can I rent a game? Y'all got Super Mario Party for N64?
Talk about the damn movie.
But no, I remember when I watched it, when I rented it, and then when my dad eventually just went ahead and just bought the director's cut, I liked the director's cut more. It felt meatier as far as a movie goes. I know Blake will immediately go, I know what he's talking about.
Yeah.
But yeah, it felt meatier. It felt like, that's how it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
Kind of like when you watch Blade Runner.
Yeah. Well,
The original Blade Runner.
You're talking to the guy that like legitimately loves the Ultimate Edition of Batman versus Superman. So yeah.
Yeah, as long as you just don't mention Superman Returns. If you do, I'm gonna have to reach through this digital connection and strangle you.
Well, before you do that,
I don't like that movie.
Before you do that, let's move on to our next movie. You mentioned it a minute ago, Blake. X2, X-Men United. I remember this being like, I remember liking this a lot more than the original X-Men movie, as good as it was when I was a kid. And I mean, I just also like how, X2 took a lot of inspiration from another popular but kind of lesser known X-Men story, God Loves, Man Kills. And it did everything better compared to the first one. And I just loved the way, like, one of my favorite X-Men has always been Nightcrawler. And the way he was used in this movie was like a fucking wet dream for me as a kid.
Yeah, I get you there.
Yeah. I mean, it was just a great movie. It really expanded upon the tones of the previous movie in terms of, the mutant prejudice going on in the world of this movie. There was just a lot more heart and soul behind all the characters this time around. Blake, what do you got to say about X2?
I mean, it's hands down better than the first movie.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's almost a fact. And then I think I knew one guy who said all the X-Men movies suck except the first one, and I'm like, why are you weird?
Whoa.
But he also his favorite MCU movie is Thor: The Dark World, so whatever.
I really don't want to know the name of this person.
But yeah, no, I mean, X2, X-Men United was like, it was probably like the first like great superhero sequel. It came out the year before Spider-Man 2, which was, so X2 was Spider-Man 2 before Spider-Man 2, and Spider-Man 2 was The Dark Knight before The Dark Knight. And then, I'm sure there were people that liked Batman Returns enough, and then, Superman 2 is if people like the first one, Superman 2 is an appreciated movie, but it was still this was a few years before the Richard Donner cut improved on it. But this was the first time, it was once again, hands down, the sequel surpasses the original. And it was one of the things I said about the first X-Men movie is that more so than a theatrical summer blockbuster, the first X-Men movie feels like the pilot episode to a TV show. And
I'm so glad you said it like that.
Yeah, and with this, it felt like a movie. It was, when it ended, you're like, okay, it wrapped up. You can tell it was wrapping up. It wasn't like, oh, wow, that could have gone on for another half hour.
Yeah.
But, it's just, it...
The one scene that's always stood out to me in that movie that really, completely, if you need to explain to someone the synopsis of the X-Men franchise as a whole.
Yeah.
The scene where, what is the X-Men about? The scene where Nightcrawler's talking with Mystique, and he's just like, I heard you could change your appearance, even your voice, and you can look like anybody. So why don't you use your power to just look normal? And she says, I shouldn't have to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, like I said, almost everything is improved upon in this one, and especially, the chemistry between Professor X and Magneto.
Yeah. You can... It's much more tangible that there is a history between these two men in this movie.
Yeah. It's just, it's quick.
They felt
and,
like friends that are now pitched against each other on opposite sides.
When the scene when they gas the glass jail or whatever, and Professor X tries to escape, but it's futile, and he's passing out, and then it's you're what the fuck's going on, they're gassing Professor X, and then Magneto just has that moment where he screams, "You should have killed me when you had the chance." That's just a fucking awesome moment.
Yeah.
And yeah, obviously, it cements, how Wolverine was going to be, the mainstream favorite.
Yeah.
And I will say, though, in hindsight, one of probably its main flaw is the flaw that, would go on is, even in X2, when, it's as good as it is, Cyclops gets shortchanged so fucking bad.
Yeah, it was a little disgusting.
In all honesty, anybody who isn't Wolverine gets shortchanged to some degree in these movies.
Yeah. But I'll let you go, Zach.
Well, I don't really think you could have said it better. The only other way I could say it is the first X-Men felt a little dry. It felt like there was a substance that they were missing to it that just wasn't there. And it felt oddly bland. It was still action-oriented, and a lot of the first beginning of it was a bit slow. This one had more of an even tempo.
Yeah.
If that makes sense? Yeah. It did have a few extra characters, Nightcrawler being one of them. I was happy about Nightcrawler because I loved the shit out of Nightcrawler.
Mm-hmm.
He was cool as shit, man. And the fact that they were able to find that one missing link in their movies on the second try.
Yeah.
I wish you would have got it in the first try, but I'm glad that you got it in the second one, because by the third one, I know sometimes it felt like, the equivalent of falling down a whole flight of stairs of how fast everything started happening.
Yeah.
But isn't that what a clincher to a series would be? Everything's culminating, coming together. This is a good middle half. This is the one rare moment where you put something in the microwave and the middle's actually warm.
It's the good part of the Hot Pocket.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of which, if we're going in order of what I was seeing on this list, I cannot wait for what's next. Because me and Blake, we're not going to be able to shut up.
Yeah.
I'm gonna disappoint you guys.
Oh, wow, you're changing it up.
Oh,
Oh,
no,
wow, adding a little spice.
No, I'm not changing it up. I'm gonna disappoint you with my fucking opinion. So why
Oh, well, you know,
Oh,
I'm glad I don't care about that.
I mean, to be
Thanks,
fair, you've
Mom.
been doing that. You've been doing that the whole. You've been doing that the whole time I've known you. So whatever.
eat my butt. Well, then why don't we move on to that topic? Why don't we? We're gonna talk about two movies at once here: The Matrix Reloaded and The Matrix Revolutions, since they came out in the same year. Now,
Oh, wow.
I'm going to preface this by saying I have an interesting history with The Matrix. I did not watch The Matrix when it originally came out. I did not see The Matrix for the first time until like 5 or 6 years ago. And I didn't really care for it that much. I thought it was an okay movie. I didn't think it was an amazing movie like I had been told, like so many others had led me to believe over the years.
I'm right here.
No, it's okay, Zach. He acknowledges that he's literally against the entire world with this. So
Yeah.
but go ahead.
Now, up until this podcast, I still had not seen The Matrix Reloaded or Revolutions. I managed to watch The Matrix Reloaded for the first time today. And I gotta say, like, it is worse than the first one. Like,
Wow.
it is so gratuitous and so self-insisting that it almost borders on self-parody. Like,
Really?
first off, this movie could have easily been 20 to 30 minutes shorter. Those fight scenes, first off, the fight scenes don't even look like martial arts. They look like limbs randomly flailing everywhere. You would
Well,
think-
that's what you get. That's what you get when you have your brain plugged into a computer.
And also, they drag on for so fucking long. Like, every single one. Like, the fight where he's like, when Neo's fighting, like, that small army of Agent Smiths and the highway scene. I kept looking at my fucking phone, seeing how much time had passed, just so I can get a gauge for how much time was left. They drag for
Damn,
so
you really hated the Burley Brawl, didn't you?
They drag for so fucking long, and they don't progress the plot at all. They look silly, not just because, you know, the quote-unquote martial arts look silly, and there's just exaggerated, unrealistic-looking, goofy-looking random flips thrown in, but also because the CGI has aged fucking horrendously. It doesn't even look good by 2003 standards, in my not-so-humble opinion. And just biting, like, in all honesty, this movie, it'll, like I mentioned in the last episode, Star Wars Episode 2 Attack of the Clones looks like a mid-2000s YouTube video. This is about on par in some of those scenes with some of that CGI. It's just so silly. Like, the whole time I'm questioning, why do they always wear, like, the sunglasses with the black clothes when they're in the Matrix? Like, first off, wouldn't that make you stand out more to the fucking agents because you're all wearing a fucking uniform? And second, it just, I know so many people will be like, that's just like an iconic look. When you think of the movie, you think of that look. It just looks fucking silly to me. The movie is so self-insisting and so silly. It almost comes off as a self-parody to me. I probably could have fit in The Matrix Revolutions today, but honestly, I felt like giving my dog a bath and mowing the lawn was a better use of my time.
Actually, from my opinion, that I'll get to later, you were correct in that. Good job.
So that is my opinion on The Matrix Reloaded. Personally, I mean, people thinking that The Matrix is the Wachowskis' magnum opus, I feel like is the cinematic equivalent of peaking in high school. That being said, I'll let you guys get into it.
All right.
Well,
Let's bring some positivity to this, Blake.
Well, first of all, I'll go ahead and then I'd like to bounce it to you, Zach, and then if it's okay with you, I would like for you to bounce it back.
All right, I'll do some verbal tennis.
But we can just talking about Reloaded for right now.
All right, that's my favorite.
Just talking about Reloaded. As far as the runtime, Donnie, I think the one thing we can all agree on, whether you disliked it, whether you like it, I mean the brand or the Matrix in general, like Kogo and I think the one thing we can agree on is we didn't need a fucking orgy scene.
Yeah,
Like,
I forgot to bring that up.
You
I forgot
God.
to bring it up. I forgot to bring that up. That's another thing, like, talking about, just how this movie has so many gratuitous, self-insisting moments. Like, that is another scene that I was like, what is this adding to the plot? Like,
Yeah.
it just really makes the whole movie come off as, like, the Wachowskis were just sitting there like, yeah, it's going to have explosions and kung fu, and you know what? Fuck it. Throw a sex scene in there.
Yeah.
I remember watching it. So I remember watching it as, like, I think it was like maybe 14, 15. I did watch it later, but I waited until I owned it. Because I missed that train by a day and a half. And by day and a half, I mean a few years. That's not important. I remember watching it when I was around 15-ish, and I got to that scene and I went, that really didn't need to happen.
Yeah.
Kind of bored.
Mm-hmm.
And then I fast forwarded through it. And then I watched it, was it 2 weeks ago or about a week ago, and I was watching through it, and I was like, yeah, all right, oh, yeah, punch him in the face. Yeah, fuck his shit up. Whoa, yeah. Got to the orgy scene. They really didn't need
punch him in
this.
the face, yeah.
I was like, I'm really bored. Let's fast forward. None of this really matters. We already know. Trinity, I love you. Oh, I love you too, Neo. All right, back to the shooting. We get it. All right, you want to fuck. But yeah, I mean, that was the only part that I felt really unnecessary because it was already implied.
So
why did you have to go that graphic?
So then, talking about the rest of it, also, like, it's just okay. Yeah. Anyway, moving on from whatever the fuck that scene was. Also, Zack Snyder did it better in Watchmen anyway. But,
Hallelujah.
I remember it was Super Bowl 2003, and I had never seen The Matrix. I remember, like, a couple years prior, people would bring it up in elementary school, and my cousin brought it up, and like, oh yeah, it was just the first one. Oh man, it was just such a really cool movie. It was about, like, machines and whatever. And I remember I was watching, and I forget who played the Super Bowl, so why would I even fucking remember that anyway? But anyway, Super Bowl 03, and all of a sudden, like, the green code starts going down the screen. And it's like, and keep in mind how much ad time is for like 30 seconds. I feel like it was like a minute long. I don't know. I'd have to confirm it, but it was like the Super Bowl spot for both The Matrix Reloaded and The Matrix Revolutions. And as a 12-year-old kid, like, I was seeing the coolest shit ever. And I was like, what is, and I'm like, oh yeah, it's that one movie people brought up to me like a couple years ago. And my brother-in-law was like, oh yeah, the first one's really good. I'm really excited about the new one's coming out. It should be cool. So then I finally saw the first movie. And without getting into, like, the first movie too much, like, I finally watched the first movie, and it was awesome. I mean, I loved it. It was my favorite movie for like several years. And it's probably up there as the movies that I had seen the most growing up. I remember in one year, I probably watched it at least 5 times. But then I wasn't old enough to go see Reloaded in theaters, and I had to wait until DVD. And so yeah, that's just kind of like my like prologue to Reloaded, like, being introduced to it and everything. So, Zach, I want to bounce it over to you, and then I can actually get into what I thought of it.
One of the things, if I'm not mistaken, I mean, I had seen, I don't remember seeing too many commercials for it, and if I did, they were really, like, sparse, pronunciation. Throw it out the fucking window. I remember the hype for it wasn't actually my own. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, this was one of the few things in the very beginning that me and you actually bonded over.
Yeah.
Because you brought it to my attention, and I was like, "What is this?"
Yeah.
And, like, I lost my shit. Like, I was like, this is badass. I need to be a part of this. What is this? Give me it all. And eventually my parents, they talked, and then they eventually saved up the money, and then they got me for Christmas eventually later on down the road, the Ultimate Matrix box set collection.
Yeah.
And I remember that night, after I played whatever video games I'd got, I sat down and watched from start to finish, the first, the second, and the third. And
did you not sleep that night?
no, bruh, I rarely sleep. Especially on Christmas. There was way too much excitement in the air. I'll sleep when I'm dead. But to be fair, I will say, because I know that we're taking this slow, the shorthand version of how I saw it when I first got to marathon all of it, and I was like, yeah! First Matrix, I was pumped. The second Matrix, I was like, oh my god, please follow this up. Don't leave me on a cliffhanger. The third one was a sad hand job.
A rogue handy.
It was a rogue handy. I wanted it. I was ready for it. I was prepared. And all of the fireworks didn't go off but one, and it was basically and I'm like, that shit's depressing. I don't like this. I really don't. And then I remember always constantly watching Reloaded. I think out of all of the Matrixes, my top goes number 1, Reloaded, number 2, and it's a very close number 2, because you really can't beat the original, because it sets the bar for everything else, which is the Matrix. And Matrix Revolutions is really way down there. It's trying. God bless it.
Someone get it.
The only thing good about Revolutions was the breach of Zion.
Yeah.
That valiant fight with the mech suit dudes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And all the Sentinels are just pouring through like a tidal wave, and they're just pouring bullets into it. It's a hopeless fight, and you're like, oh my god, you're trying to root for the underdog, and you think if you scream at the screen hard enough, they might win. Yeah. I can tell you from experience that doesn't help, because it's already pre-recorded.
Yeah. So again, I love the first one. I mean, it is one of my favorite sci-fi movies, science fiction movies. I think the first one perfectly embodies and defines the transition of the 1990s into the new millennium. I think it's just a very definitive movie, and it is one of the last movies that several other movies after it tried to emulate and tried to copy and tried to be. And I mean, that in itself, like they say, like imitation and parody is one of the greatest forms of flattery. Like how many different times did you see them, like other people mocking the whole like bending over backwards and dodging stuff? Like it was just such a cultural thing. And then, you know, without turning this into a giant interview or a giant review of the first movie, Reloaded, while fun at the time and having cool fight scenes, it is not the first movie. Like, it does not surpass the first movie, in my opinion. And then I want to take a wild guess at a part that probably really pissed you off, Donnie. Probably a part that maybe cheapened it. Reloaded, like a movie, like a theatrical release motion picture. The movie itself ends with fucking text saying "to be concluded." ...
Yeah.
Like, I remember when even when I was so pumped and hyped, even seeing that, I was like, did they really just put that at the end of a movie?
Yeah. No, I feel the way too. I try to overlook it.
I'm sorry, like that just cheapens it so much, because like this is trying to be like the R-rated Star Wars of its time, and. But yeah, I mean, it's again, it probably if you make all the slow motion normal speed, the movie's probably only like 90-80 minutes. and yeah, like we didn't need the orgy scene. I still think the Beerly brawl is cool.
Oh my God.
I'm sure like the CGI of them copying Hugo Weaving's face on all those stunt doubles probably doesn't look the best right now. But I mean, I think that is a very interesting point you brought up, Donnie, about how sometimes the martial arts is them just doing wacky waving inflatable arm tube men.
Yeah.
And then also, like, why do they dress so obviously if they're trying to hide from the agents? I think that's actually a really funny critique. So yeah, I mean, my thoughts on Reloaded is that it's cool in a way. It's funny because Richard Roeper actually, like, who was like one of the biggest movie critics after Roger Ebert, he legit thinks the Reloaded is better than the first one, which is surprising. But yeah, I don't know. And then with Revolutions, not getting too far into it because I don't want to stretch this podcast out too much. Donnie, if you feel the way you feel about Reloaded, Revolutions legit gives you the middle finger and spits in your eyeball.
Oh yeah, no. Oh yeah, no.
Yeah, I mean
it's a letdown, but like not like a serious letdown, but like when they bring you all the way up from the first one, when they start bringing you up with the first movie, and then they like try to like eject you into the stratosphere with the second, they let you fall back down to earth with the third.
Yeah. It's I don't even know what. It's just not good. And in a way, I'm kind of glad they're making a fourth movie as a way of apologizing for it. But then also I'm thinking, like, what could the fourth movie possibly be about in a way? So that'll be interesting to see, I guess. But yeah, so yeah, without stretching out too much, that was just.
I mean, we've seen what happens when random sequels try to apologize for previous installments. It's called X-Men: Days of Future Past.
Yeah. So, Zack, unless you had anything else to say, that was basically
all I gotta say is every time I would talk to people who really liked The Matrix, and I would be like, I think my favorite's Reloaded. I'd get stares, and I'm like, don't look at me like that, bitch. I'll die on this hill.
Because I think we'll get to talk about it a little bit more later in video games.
Yeah,
so
that's literally all I have to say. I mean,
yeah. So,
I'll
Donnie,
die on that hill.
I give it back to you, Donnie.
All right, well, we'll move on to our next movie of 2003. A fun one from Pixar, Finding Nemo. I've seen this movie a couple times. As far as Pixar movie goes, this is like middle tier for me. I always thought it was decent.
Yeah.
I don't have any like strong opinions on it one way or the other. I think it's a decent movie. I think Ellen DeGeneres kind of like holds the whole movie together as Dory.
Yeah.
I've never seen Finding Dory. I still
oddly enough doesn't drive it away like the rest of her workers.
Oh wow. But I remember this period kind of being a little like slower for Pixar because this was around the time where you also had like Cars, which I'm not a fan of, and then The Incredibles, which I'm also not a huge fan of.
I mean, I'm a huge fan of Mrs. Incredible's ass, but I mean, that's about as far as that goes.
Oh, please. I was really praying to God we weren't going to go here.
Hey, listen. That ass edible, call her Miss Incredible.
Oh,
Jesus.
I have to get off the phone.
Next movie.
What do you guys remember about Finding Nemo?
All I remember is touch the butt and shark bait ooh ha ha.
What is it with you and Pixar and butts?
I don't know. What is it with Pixar and butts? They always make the moms hella thick. And if you don't believe me, people have made screenshot for screenshot of different characters. There is scientific proof. The truth is out there. We have to seek it.
Calm down.
Vote or die, y'all.
Anyway. Donnie, it's interesting. Man. It's interesting. It's interesting that you bring this up as like well, your personal opinion that it's just okay to you and it's mid tier for you. For a lot of people, this is their favorite one actually.
Yeah.
It's definitely
Yeah.
a fan favorite. And for the longest time it was. And yeah, I agree with you that that Ellen DeGeneres really holds it together and drives it home. I mean, so much so that her character is the sequel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I mean, to be fair, I mean, I was joking around. I mean, I remember more about that movie than what I said, but
oh, I thought you were going to apologize for all the butt stuff.
oh no, I
Never
no,
apologize for
as
butt
as
stuff.
I said previously, I'll die on that hill.
He'll die on those buns.
Oh yeah, nah. It'll be a nice place to sit down and ponder the day's thoughts.
I need you to stop.
Anyway, yeah, no, yeah, I totally agree with you in that. This was a lot of people's favorite out of. Can you actually call it the Pixar lexicon? Is that a good way of saying it?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm going to use that term, and if someone corrects me later, they can kiss my ass.
There you go again with butts.
I think you're looking too far into it. As I remember, you once told me only the hungry look.
What?
Well, getting back to the actual topic, and I close out my statement. It was a good movie. I can't really find too much fault in it. It was to make kids happy. What more do you want?
That's fair.
Yeah.
Well, then let's move on to our next movie.
Oh boy.
Can we even call this a movie? The Room.
No, it's a strange. It's a strange.
It's a strange fucking malaria dream.
It's a strange.
Yeah. Fucking The Room.
I just love that, we're doing this tonight so I can imagine James Franco in my voice going, wow, happy birthday.
The Room, not so much a movie as much as just a series of moving memes.
Oh
My
God.
God, this movie is just the butt of so many jokes, and it's just so, like, it's almost impossible to sit through. Like, as
Hi, Dougie.
yeah. Oh, hi, Dougie. It's,
Doggy.
I've always, when it comes to The Room, and just specifically Tommy Wiseau.
And then you just end that sentence right there.
Yeah.
Next movie.
I've always said that I have seen movies, I've seen plenty of movies where Americans try to act like foreigners to not much success. I've seen movies where foreigners try to act like Americans to not much success. This was the first time I saw a movie where a fucking alien tried to act like a human being to not much success.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, no, that's accurate.
I refuse to believe that Tommy Wiseau is of this planet. Like,
Honestly, I heard a theory that makes a lot of sense. He's actually one of the first government-sanctioned AIs. And he's literally one of those culminations of, I had a computer watch like 500 Olive Garden commercials and had it write its own.
Why Olive Garden?
I don't know. Hey, listen, it's
you got
called
limited soup and
improv.
breadsticks, son.
Oh, hey, I love sitting here at Olive Garden. All these soup and breadsticks makes me really, really happy. It never ends. Oh, and here comes the entree. Thank you, Æther. Hi, Tommy. You're always here, and I'm happy about it. Come to Olive Garden. You'll be happy. You'll be family.
What the fuck is this episode?
Listen, at the beginning, before he started recording, I said we are the poster childs for Ritalin.
You said
Adderall.
Adderall. Oh my God,
Adderall.
his
We are the
ADHD's so bad he forgot his medication.
Listen. Between
Bob was listening.
God, yeah, now I'm flustered. Between fucking Tommy Wiseau being an AI, Mrs. Incredible's ass, the Matrix the Matrix Revolutions being a letdown, and the fucking like space shuttle crashing, I am very confused at this point. I am running on fumes.
Oh, those fumes happen to be a Poot through the ether?
Yeah, that only Daredevil can see, and that's what gives you away. That was your kryptonite.
Oh man.
Go ahead, Blake. Talk about The Room.
I mean, with all due respect to our own show, what more is there to say about it that hasn't been said in the last few years, really? But
Spoons.
There's not much to. You can't really talk about The Room for just. This is one of those. Okay, wow.
You need a glass of water there, bud?
Bob was listening. One thing that I think you need to credit The Room for is you almost can't talk about it for just a couple minutes. Once you start talking about it, you really need to allow yourself to talk about it for like a while.
Yeah.
There's like so what you're saying is like it's a philosophical journey?
No, it's more like you watch it, you're just like, I have so many questions, and they all begin with why.
But yeah, it's like Tommy Wiseau. He's not a foreigner trying to be American. He's not an American trying to be foreign. He's trying to be human the whole time.
He's an android trying to learn humanity, like Data from Star Trek.
So it spawned so much stuff. I mean, it spawned the Disaster
I honestly
Artist
like
book.
the sequel.
What's the sequel?
The Disaster Artist. It answers a lot of those questions of why.
And as good as, did you ever see the Disaster Artist movie, Zach?
Listen. My roommate, Mark Rose, a.k.a. Youngblood, he sat me down one night and said, we're going to watch The Disaster Artist. I owe it to you to show you The Disaster Artist. And I went, all right, fine. And I sat down, I watched it, and I went, this answers only half of the questions I have.
Well, and the problem with that is, like, in an age where, and I hate to skip ahead to a movie that came out in 2017, but in an age when a lot of movies suffer from being too long, that movie's too short. Like, it ends way too soon.
Yeah. And
they cut out too much of it. Like, there's an entire chapter dedicated to the filming of the flower shop scene.
Yeah.
And it's where he questions
whether or not the dog is real.
Yeah, he asks if it's and it is such a popular segment of the book that it is used as the preview for the audiobook. It is the sample chapter on online that you can listen to on like Amazon or whatever, like play a segment of the book. So yeah, they cut out like what was basically the trailer for the book, and yeah, the movie's too short. As good as it is, but yeah, I mean, anyway, how's your sex life?
Funny story, Blake. So anyway, about the next movie.
I told you, it's confidential.
Well, Mike, it seems like you're the expert.
Anything for my little princess. That part, honest to God, that part made me cringe so hard. Oh, God.
Remember when they announced that they were going to re-release the movie in 3D, and Tommy Wiseau just tweeted, "Very soon you will all be very close to my bottom."
I missed that.
Yeah.
Again, I don't really ponder the Twitterverse.
Oh, it's a hole.
Yeah.
Actually, I was gonna say it's like a dumpster fire.
No, it's got some holes.
So does Swiss cheese, but people still love that shit.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on to our next movie, Terminator 3: Rise of the Machines.
Jesus.
We can go to the next movie.
No, we're going to talk about this movie, goddammit.
Oh, God, I don't want to bring up trauma.
I remember being a kid, and I just remember this movie being announced, and I remember everybody losing their shit at first because, like, Terminator 1, big deal. Terminator 2, even bigger deal. And then
because it was a good movie.
Right. Instant classics.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I will still say to this day, Terminator 2 is, like, so frustratingly close to being a 10 out of 10 that, like, it makes you angry that it's not.
Yeah, that's accurate, actually.
Terminator...
Or to me, at least.
And I remember Terminator 3. I still haven't seen Terminator 3, just because of, general reviews. But I remember Terminator 3 when it was announced, everybody being like, "Holy fuck, Terminator's back." I remember when it came out, nobody was happy about it.
No.
It was like just seeing a mass example of pure disappointment and being let down is my memory of it. What about you guys?
So,
Yeah, I'm gonna let Blake go first.
you know, in a way, I'm glad that Terminator 3 exists because I'm one of the people that actually like Terminator 4. And when people are like, oh, the one with Christian Bale, really? I'm able to say, listen, Terminator 3 makes Terminator 4 look Oscar worthy. I mean, if T2 Judgment Day is a excellent display of fireworks, then Terminator 3 is that prankster in the neighborhood trying to do a gag by farting into a Coke can, but he accidentally cuts his butthole on the can. And he hasn't had his...
Hold up. What kind of pranks are fucking kids in your neighborhood doing?
They were only the highest of class of lowbrow.
And he hasn't had his tetanus shot yet, and it sends his grandmother into a panic, and she runs through the sliding glass door and forgets that it was closed.
Blake, is there something you want to tell us?
Kogel, you go ahead.
Oh, why do you gotta do this to me? I thought she was my friend. Alright, so Terminator 3 was one of those movies that a lot of the time I really didn't keep up with movies. Most of the time I actually relied on Blake to be like the town crier to me. A lot of the time I vetted. I'm honest to God serious, as funny as you may find that. I vetted what movies usually were good and weren't good, or what was worth seeing, I think was the best way of saying that. What was really worth seeing through Blake coming up to me in like hysterical happiness going, dude, this movie is amazing. And I'd be like, alright, damn, I gotta see that shit then. I heard nothing about Terminator 3. I barely even knew, I knew there was a third one. That's all I knew. And then one day I was surfing the TV channels and I happened upon, it was like TNT, or I don't know. It was one of like the TNT, TNN, or whatever they evolved into. Mm-hmm. And I caught a glimpse of it, and I was like, oh, wow, this must be Terminator 3. And I sat there and I watched it, and I went, now I know why it's on television, and I changed the channel. I didn't like it. I think the only somewhat redeeming part of it that seemed cool to me was the part where he shoved John Connor and I think his love interest into a coffin and carried them on his shoulder while he held a Gatling gun aloft and just mowed somebody down. I wasn't even paying attention at that point. That was it. And maybe I gotta rewatch it. I'll at least buy some cheap booze and sit down and give it a try. But from what I remember, that wasn't your best robot flick, was it?
This was the end of the decade where there were more bad blockbusters than good ones.
I blame the war.
Fuck. All right.
Well, next movie, Pirates of the Caribbean: Curse of the Black Pearl. Now, I remember.
God!
I remember seeing this movie, and I remember just initial thought to this movie was it's very different than your typical Disney movie. And I just remember this movie being just so fucking fun and just so cool. And I mean, Johnny Depp as Captain Jack Sparrow is just like an instant classic cinema character. I mean,
yeah.
I don't think there's talk of them rebooting the series. I don't think they're ever gonna find if they do, they need to make a whole new character and everything, because they're not gonna top Johnny Depp as Captain Jack Sparrow, at least in terms of how iconic he is as that character. It's just a fun, cool movie. And at the same time, despite that, you didn't really expect it to launch the franchise that it did. I mean, like, we're now, like, what, 5 movies in with a possible 6th one, maybe? Nobody knows for sure right now, but, I mean, I just remember it being a really fun movie. What about you, Blake?
I mean, yeah, I mean, it was the return of, like, an adventure blockbuster, and a blockbuster just being fun for the sake of being fun. It wasn't trying to do some, like, heavy-handed, like, narrative or, like Man versus Machine or, there was a lot of sci-fi going on at the time. And as much as I love the genre of sci-fi, it's very hit and miss. But yeah, it was just nice seeing, like, a fun adventure movie that, like, it was what it was and you could follow it and you didn't need to, like, you didn't need to go into this philosophical phase of, like, trying to understand it. And Johnny Depp is what he was doing. It was so, I mean, it worked out so well for him. He decided to just do that for every movie after that. So yeah, I mean, that was really the start of Johnny Depp just doing the same thing for the next, like, almost 20 years. So yeah, Zach.
So I remember I'm gonna really just bring this to the head of the conversation for the second. A lot of these movies I saw after the fact, so you're gonna get a bit of a unique perspective.
Okay.
But Pirates of the Caribbean, I didn't see it in theaters. However, my family got together. I think, did we rent this? No, that was when Netflix sent you shit through the mail. Whew, I feel like I need an AARP card. But we rented it, and we watched it. I liked it. I really did. Blake hit the nail on the head. It was good, just good, simple fun.
Mm-hmm.
It's the equivalent of how some people, just like a simple video game where they just blow shit up from a long day's work. They come home, they sit down. All they want to do is have a little bit of fun, innocent little bit of fun. That's what that movie was. It was that I just want to see a cool adventure with explosions and a little bit of intrigue and, a wacky main character with, some, dubious intentions. And that's what it did. It did what it says on the tin. That's rare you see a movie that does what it says on the tin. Now, funny story. I think you'll appreciate this. My mom's not a fan of action movies, apparently, and it is very, very, very true. Action movies actually put her to sleep. She fell asleep about halfway through this movie. And when the credits were rolling, we all looked at each other, and I was like, damn, that was actually really good. My dad's like, yeah, it was really good. My sister's like, yeah, it was okay. My sister's not a fan of action, too, but she doesn't fall asleep during it. And we all looked at my mom, and my mom was like, out. Mom, huh? What'd you think? You think what? The movie. Oh, did they find the necklace? What necklace? The Black Pearl. Did they find the necklace? And we all looked at each other and had a heart attack.
I remember, as much as I like this movie, and as fun as I guess everybody agrees it is, my dad loves this movie. And I remember when he took me to see it at the Frostburg Theater, and he just had a blast with it. And he loved it so much, he was like, he told the rest of our family to go see it. Like, you would have thought he was like, I don't know, trying to, like, he was a producer on it. But I remember he was like, he took my pop to it. And for everyone listening, that was my mom's dad. And he was like so excited to take him to see it because my pop, saw like the old Robin Hood movies, like Earl Flynn and all that. And he was so excited to take him. My pop My pop fucking hated it, and he thought
really.
He thought it was so dumb. He thought it was like really just weird. And he was like, "Yeah, that Johnny Depp in that movie, he was a weird asshole." and I remember like he was just like, yeah, he was just roasting the whole movie. And then it was like before we knew it, it was like Thanksgiving, and he and my dad were still disagreeing on this. And my dad was like really advocating for it being like the return of the fun summer adventure. And I remember my Uncle Regis, who is my mom's brother, born 1 year to the day after her. He was like, I just have a question. If all the bad pirates couldn't be killed, then what was the point in even fighting them? And he just walks out of the room. I remember this movie caused just such a big civil war in my family over whether or not it was amazing or whether or not it was just fucking whatever.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I didn't know it was so controversial with the Joneses.
Yeah, it was. There was a lot of hurt feelings over this movie. So.
Well, on that note, let's move on to our next movie, Freddy vs. Jason. Now, I brought this movie up for this episode because I feel like this movie was the one that, like, this was the definitive death of, like, the slasher movie genre and the slasher killer genre. Because I remember this movie being announced, and I remember, like, these movies like Freddy Krueger and Jason Voorhees, these were like the movies that, like, my parents grew up with. And I remember this movie being announced and, like, my parents and people my parents' age being like, holy fuck, they're, putting those two in the same movie? That's fucking awesome. And it came out, and it was, like, it just was. Like, it didn't bring anything new to the table. And I mean, like, keep in mind, like, both Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street were, pretty lackluster for a long time before this movie even came out, which is part of the reason why this movie spent so long in developmental hell. But I just remember, like, this movie came out, and there was no reason this movie couldn't have been fucking awesome. Like, it was the original version of, like, fan service, and it just was. There was nothing new to it. And, like, it's called Freddy vs. Jason, but they don't even really, like, fight each other until, like, the final act of the movie. And it's not even much of a conflict, in all honesty. And ever since this movie, like, the slasher genre hasn't really, like, they keep trying to bring it back, but it doesn't really, get a foothold. The only, like, slasher genre movies that really do well anymore are ones that are making fun of the genre more than anything. And I mean, recently we had the reboot of Halloween, which was a good movie, but that's because it basically said fuck off to all the sequels. And brought the franchise back to its roots. But I mean, like, yeah, ever since this movie, I feel like this was the death of, like, the 80s slasher genre. What do you guys think?
Well,
Oh, you go ahead, Zach.
Oh, no. I know exactly what I'm going to say. You go right on ahead.
Well, I think, like, the new Halloween actually does do a good job at trying to bring it back. And then you mentioned movies that are almost parodying it. I didn't see the second one, and I heard it was whatever. Happy Death Day is actually really good for what it is. Just to put that out there. But I mean, Freddy vs. Jason, I've never seen it. I've only seen, like, a scene here and there on, like, AMC or, just whatever, during the day, whatever basic cable network it would have been on. But, I mean, as far as it being lackluster or underwhelming, my honest to God question is, what could have really been expected in all realism and honesty is, like, the film itself is a gimmick. It's versus movies just don't work for the most part.
Yeah.
I mean, if you have
Predator.
Yeah, if you have versus in your title, that's almost like a kiss of death.
Yeah.
And probably, I mean, as divisive of a film it is, like, probably the best versus movie is Batman versus Superman.
Jesus,
and even
here we go again.
and even then, you have half the people who talk about it hate it. So yeah, it's just like, you can't have a movie with verses in the title and have it be universally praised. So yeah, and I know the final shot or the ending or whatever is Jason holding up Freddy's head, and he just, like, winks at the camera or whatever. And I remember I remember Michael's dad just having the basic question where it's like, well, what the fuck would happen next? What Freddy gonna do? Lick him to death? Like, just. So I mean, yeah, I mean it's a gimmick movie that suffered a gimmick's end. But go ahead, Zach.
Well, to be fair, I didn't even see this movie. Quite frankly, I didn't even care. I, as a kid, was never really concerned about slasher movies. I didn't even give a shit. I thought it was cool that they would pit, the way I saw it as a kid, little kid, was cool. They pit a legend against a legend. It's like one of those classic, Greek epics or, insert cool story from the past kind of thing. It's cool what if. And then I didn't give a shit about seeing it. I was just like, good for you guys. I'm glad you have something that makes you happy. But to counter one, at least give at least one counterpoint to what Donnie mentioned, there's at least one good slasher that I actually liked, and you guys actually sat me down, be like, you got to see this at least. And I was like, okay, all right. And I liked it, which was Cabin in the Woods.
Yeah.
That was good. I liked that one. It was decent. I really did. It was really cool. But other than that, I had heard some dumb things about Freddy vs. Jason, and the fact that it feels niche talking about it should give you all you need to know about that movie.
Fair enough.
Also, to be very fair to something Blake said, and I actually have my computer in front of me here. Let me look something up.
He's hacking in.
Yeah, I'm hacking the system. Alien versus Predator. I'm one of those very few people who will actually defend the shit out of that movie.
Okay.
And it's a year off from the time frame that we're talking about. This is 2003-ish. This movie was 2004.
Mm-hmm.
I actually did like the. I guess you could consider this like a sci-fi horror slasher, in a way. Because technically it has all the... Yeah, it's basically like a slasher dreamed up by a nerd. Which, I'll raise my hand. I'll bring those two together. But, yeah, I loved Alien vs. Predator. I liked how the story flowed. It really seemed like they were reaching to create the story. But, I mean, I liked it. Quite frankly, it kind of boils down to the idea of, if you really think the story is coherent and you really got enjoyment out of it, then what more does this thing need to be?
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, then let's move on to our next movie, Lord of the Rings, Return of the King. The conclusion of a trilogy that fucking everybody paid to go see. I mean, I always enjoyed Return of the King. The Two Towers is always my favorite of the trilogy, but Return of the King was definitely a cool fucking movie. That final scene, like all the scenes in Mordor near the end of the movie, just fantastic. The set design of like Gondor and all that, just so well done. And that scene,
Endgame before it was Endgame.
yeah, it really was. Like that scene, when Frodo when the ring falls into Mount Doom, and the Tower of Sauron's like crumbling, and you just see like the fighting on the plains just like stops, and just like everybody's looking to the horizon with tears in their eyes. Like that's a fucking iconic image in cinema.
Yeah.
What do you guys got to say about Return of the King?
I think that's a pretty good way of wording it. It's Endgame before Endgame.
Yep.
It's arguably still better than Endgame. I don't know.
Yeah, they're not to be compared. It's meant to kind of say, they did it to show that the other is totally possible. It's kind of like they paved the way. None of them are better than each other. They broke ground in different ways.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, Fellowship's probably my favorite, but Return is probably the best. And like, it's when people bring up like, oh, sequels are always hard, sequels are never good, sequels are never as good as the first one, sequels usually suck. They're really talking about the third movies. because there's so many times when the part two was successful and did surpass and was superior. But I mean, almost never does the third film satisfy, and this is one of the few good third movies. And I mean, it's one of the few movies to be nominated for that many Oscars and win all of them. I mean, it's just such a great success all around. And I don't know, I don't know, I kind of wish there would be another movie like it that, like, everybody liked it, but it was also legitimately good, and it actually went to the Oscars. It was just really cool that Best Picture was a movie that everybody actually saw.
Yeah.
You know, which doesn't happen often.
Yeah.
Now it's just basically Oscar bait for the sake of Oscar bait. Hey, did you see this? It's so artsy kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how I always see it, and it feels very off-putting.
Like so many things for the past several years, I'm like, and I understand this doesn't make them good nor bad, but it almost gets annoying after a while where it's like, nobody fucking saw that. But I mean, yeah, it was just really cool that, like, there was just a movie that everybody saw and everybody loved. So yeah, Zach.
I mean, what else is there really to say? It was no, there is one thing I can say. We're talking about trilogies. Let's travel a little bit back up the list here. We talked about a trilogy previously: Matrix Reloaded, Revolutions. They couldn't pull off the the 777 on a slot machine.
Yeah.
It was more like 7 bar. This one, on the other hand, this one gave you 3 straight 7s and sent you straight to the cash out with like $1,000. It tied up everything that needed to be tied up, and it closed it out. The only thing that, I mean, a lot of people will get picky about is, well, there were certain things that didn't happen in the book. There are certain things that didn't happen in the movie that happened in the book. We get that. There are certain. Listen, if you really want this to be an 8-hour movie, by all means, you can make that. Go to New Zealand and shoot it yourself. But to me, it was everything I needed it to be, and that's all I could ask for.
All right, well then let's move
God,
on.
I find myself saying that a lot.
Well then let's move on
It's
to
like
the. Shut up!
Oh, I'm sorry!
Let's move on to the last movie of the night, Big Fish.
Oh,
man.
God.
This is a very different kind of Tim Burton movie in the sense that it has a lot of color going on. I mean, Big Fish, it's a good movie. It's a good, like, warm, heartfelt movie with a lot of soul in it.
Yeah, it's a lighter movie. It just happens to have one lighter shade of blue in the palette.
And I also just feel like there's a lot of... It's a movie that a lot of people can relate to, just, sitting down with your old man as he tells his life story kind of deal.
Salisbury Hill plays in the background.
Yeah. Blake, I know you're going to have some stuff to say about Big Fish. Why don't you go ahead?
He was the one who introduced it to me.
Same.
It's one of my favorite movies. It's probably in my top 10. Definitely in my top, like, 20. But and I understand that maybe sounds like backhanded or downgrade, but it's like, I love a lot of movies. But it's hands down my favorite Tim Burton movie. I'm not a Tim Burton fanboy at all, but and I think this is such a great example of, how he could do other stuff. He could do so much more. And this was this was released, in between episode 2 and episode 3 of the prequel trilogy. This helped prove that, like, Ewan McGregor can be so much more than just young Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a perfectly cast film. I guess it's weird how it's a shame that, like, the girl, not Jessica Lange, who plays the wife older, but I mean the actress who plays the love interest younger, She didn't really go on to do much else after this. I think I saw her in one other thing, and that was Drag Me to Hell, which is weird. But
Wow.
yeah, it was a shame that she didn't really go on to, do more and become bigger. That kind of sucks. I hate seeing that. I hate seeing someone, they did well in one thing, and it was like, oh yeah, I have to look out for them, and then you just don't see them as much again. But yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful movie. I'm not going to dance around it. Like, the ending makes me cry almost every time. It's a near perfect movie, honestly. So yeah, I'll leave it at that for me.
Zach?
I really don't think there's anything else I have to say. He pretty much hit the nail on the head, because I think the first time I ever watched it, I think we were at Trevor's grandmother's house. We
Yeah,
all kind of,
probably.
yeah, we all piled in front of the TV in the living room, and you were like, "You haven't seen this movie, right?" I'm like, "No, that's why I'm here." And you popped it in, and I mean, I couldn't find anything wrong with it. It was really good.
Yeah.
Simple.
All right, well then, that takes care of movies. Let's move on to TV of 2003.
We're not going to talk about the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
We must talk about the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Do we have? Do we have to?
I was just
It's
kidding.
a good movie.
No, it's not.
It's a fun movie.
No, it's not.
But
I liked it.
it's that or Holes. No, I don't want to. I don't want to drag this podcast. Then go ahead to TV, Donnie. I'm sorry.
All right. We're going to go on to TV. TV shows that started in 2003.
Oh boy.
First one, it's a favorite of all three of us. And we're going to have a lot to say about it. Chappelle's Show. Oh my God. This fucking show.
This show is one of the cornerstones of our humor, hands down.
Like, oh my, like, Dave Chappelle is the greatest of all time. Like, as a comedian to another comedian, Chappelle is the greatest of all time. And this fucking show, that first fucking episode when it premiered, and he had that skit with Clayton Bigsby, the blind black man who was a KKK member. First fucking episode. I remember watching that and thinking, well, this show's probably not going to last long.
He started off strong.
Oh my God, he did. And I mean, there's just so many bits and characters. Like Tyrone Biggums is just like,
God damn.
basically, if every sketchy part of downtown just became a living person.
Oh God.
And then, of course, one of my favorite bits that like still fucking almost breaks my ribs every time is the bit where he's talking about how like slow motion makes things cooler.
Oh God.
And he's just like, here's a video of me taking a shit. Now let's watch that shit again in slow motion. And he just like fucking rockets off the toilet, and the back of the toilet just like blows the fuck up. Which, that's another thing. I always had a deep love and appreciation of Chappelle's love and appreciation for poop jokes. Like the fucking Tyrone Biggums bit where they're doing like the opening theme song for him, and it just shows him like squatting in the fucking alley, and it's just like a fucking melted Twix bar. And then just like,
Don't tell nobody, I'll kill you.
yeah, fucking, oh, it's such a great show, such great humor. Unfortunately, it was too good for its own good. Because of course,
Comedy Central killed it itself.
well,
It shot itself in the foot.
well, to be fair, the audience was also fucking stupid because I mean, we all know the classic Rick James bit, and the popularity of the show like killed Dave Chappelle's spirit. Like, I remember him doing stand-up shows at this time, and the audience like heckling him and interrupting his set to shout like, I'm Rick James, bitch," at him. And like, it just got to the point to where, like, because of this show and because of like just how big it got, Chappelle fucking disappeared for like over a decade. Like, this show ended in 2006, and we didn't see him again until like 2016. But yeah, this show's just like a fucking classic. There's so many bits that, I mean, easily one of the best like bits of all time is fucking the bit with Tupac.
George W. It can't be true.
true. What the fuck is that? It might be doo-doo.
Doo-doo.
Like,
Actually, one of the first things that comes to my mind when we're bringing up Chappelle's Show for some reason is, hell yeah, I suck toes. Hello, welcome to Pop Copy. How may I help you?
like it's just such
Hey,
a...
I want to prove a point. I don't care if I go back to Rikers. I'll go back to Rikers. Yeah, that's fine. Can I help you?
Aw, Ma, shut up.
You know, that is one thing about that show that really made me sad. You mean to tell me you were able to get away with Clayton Bigsby, and yet you couldn't get away with the time haters? I call bullshit.
Apparently nobody else likes slave owners getting shot except me.
I actually said out loud the day I saw that episode, I think it's funny. I really did.
All right, first off, notice how shitty the wig is. Second, notice how I look nothing like Nelson Mandela.
I think Mr. Mandela scored some of my drugs.
You think Mandela don't know? Just such a great fucking show, and just a fucking classic of a show.
He created quotable bangers. Like,
Left
every
it
joke
just
was a
one
fucking
after
banger.
the other, one after the other.
Like, you can really use, or I don't know, how would be a better way of saying it? You can really use as a testament to how iconic what he created or what he helped create, or, you know, just the creation of it in general, how iconic it was by just saying a simple phrase and, like, immediately starts like a Manchurian Candidate secret soldier moment in somebody.
Mm-hmm.
All you gotta do is say, you know, I'm Rick James, bitch! And they
Mhm.
immediately, one, know what you're talking about, two, they laugh their ass off, and three, they try to quote the next part.
Blake, I know you got some stuff to say. Go ahead.
I wonder what Arsenio's doing right now.
Probably at a wine and cheese party.
He's probably at a wine and cheese and talking about how good the cheese is. God damn, this is some good ass cheese.
Oh
He's
man, he's probably angry that no one told him the cheese was that good.
Hey, how come you didn't tell me how good the cheese was, motherfucker? But yeah, no, you said what? Where do I even start?
Yeah.
Just, you know what? This is what I'm talking about. My boy Ronald is BAD bad. So trifling.
So trifling. Ma, shut up, bro.
It's such a
It's
lazy.
the little things.
Yeah.
Like,
It's such a lazy joke, but it's still hilarious because it's just like in the writers' room, they were like, "Hey, you know, it'd be great if he just farted on her next." And it's still funny, and it's like,
God.
I mean, you have and him shooting the slave owner. I love how he had to keep showing it.
Yeah.
It's just like, boom.
He's like, oh, I'm getting away with it? Cool, I'm gonna milk this for all it's worth.
But just the little grunt that he makes, like boom, boom, and then they're bringing even a gate.
Your mama got one big titty and one little titty. Call the bitch Biggie Smalls.
They even have gay landscapers ass titties. Ass and titties.
Ass and titties. I laughed so hard when I first saw that, I cried.
Can we see that guy again?
Oh. Of course, there's also the ultimate classic. Now, come on now, what am I going to do? Is jump up on Eddie's couch and just start grinding my feet for no reason? Come on, I don't do things just to do it. I got more sense than that. Yeah, I remember grinding my feet on Eddie's couch.
Do you remember why he did it? Because he could buy another one, and then it does the instant rewind. I didn't just do things just to do them. I had a little more sense. Come on now, what am I just going to start grinding my feet up?
Grinding my feet up on his couch? So what'd you do?
Yeah, I remember grinding my feet up on Eddie's couch.
And the rich motherfucker could buy another one.
Which, sidebar, I love how Rick James looked like he was made out of fucking hamburger meat during that whole bit.
Honestly, I thought he was made out of Jell-O pudding the way he was sweating.
The thing that really like tied this whole show together was the audience. Like, this show really highlighted how, like, I guess important a live audience can be to a show like this. Like,
yeah, and it's go ahead.
The audience reaction just like made stuff that was already funny 50 times funnier. Like,
It was the audience reaction that made the realization of the Clayton Bigsby skit even funnier, because slowly you could hear the audience start to understand more and more what's going on, because it wasn't obvious what was going on before.
yeah.
Because he just shows up to his doorstep and he's like, "What, do you think I can't write all those books just because I'm blind?" And you hear a few people giggle.
Yeah.
And then it was like he was the only black kid, he was the only black child at our school, and you hear even more people giggle. And then finally he was like, "So what did you do?" "Well, to make it easier on him and everyone else, we just told him that he was white." And everyone just bursts out laughing, it was in waves.
Yeah.
Everyone understanding that skit.
Well, it's the same thing with like the Rick James bit we just mentioned. The first time he's like, you know, I don't just do things just to do them. I got a little more sense than that. Yeah, I remember grabbing my feet on Eddie's couch and everybody like you hear like half the audience laugh, like it's a subdued laughter, and then the rewind, and then he says it again, and just, "Yeah, I remember grabbing my feet on Eddie's couch." The whole audience fucking dies, and it just made it so much funnier. And it's just, I must be losing my mind reminiscing about Charlie Murphy kicking my ass, and just like the audience is just like done.
If the only thing you got out of this show was "I'm Rick James, bitch," then you did not deserve this show.
Yeah,
because there was so much.
In fact,
there was so much
one
else
of
that
my
was great
favorite
about it.
gold mines for quotes happens to be the Black Bush episode. That one kills me. We got we got 40 nations ready to roll, son. Like who? Who the fuck said that?
He's like,
I got some yellow cake
England?
right here.
Oh dear God!
Don't drop that
yellow
shit.
cake.
Don't drop it.
All right, I wasn't going to tell you this. He bought yellow cake. That's right, the motherfucker bought yellow cake, and I know it because I have it right here. You don't believe me? I got the head of the black CIA right here behind me. I can't believe you not believing he bought yellow cake. You know what? Fucking right.
Don't drop that shit. Don't drop it.
and then he tries to calm everybody down, be like, "Okay, we just got back from Africa. Cradle of fucking civilization."
Don't drop that shit. No, I have it. I have it here in my special CIA napkin.
Pray to God you don't drop that shit.
And then
Fucking right.
And then it was like, some people think you only want to go over there just for oil. Oil?
Oil?
Who said anything about oil? Bitch, you
Oil,
cooking?
bitch, you cooking? Oh, fuck, we gotta get out of here!
Yeah, they knock over the water pitcher and run out, even though it's where they live.
I think the icing on the cake for that whole skit, the gold mine of skits, or the gold mine of quotes for that skit, happens to be when, out of nowhere, they got Jamie Foxx to be Tony Blair.
Yeah.
That took me by surprise. I'm like, this guy's in on it? He got him to do this? Oh shit!
If you hit this
I
table
remember-
one more
I remember-
time, if you hit this table one more time, then the record might skip. Might skip.
Might skip.
I told you.
I told y'all.
Stop hitting
Stop
the table.
hitting the table.
Like,
I remember-
Chappelle's Tupac voice is just so fucking great.
I remember both his guards came in, and one of them, he had crooked eyes. "Steve, the tables have turned, Darkness. Go ahead, gentlemen. You may do with him as you wish. Y'all take one more step, I'm kicking this guy out the motherfucking window." And just, he karate kicks him, and Rick James flies across the entire...
Man, Charlie Murphy think he Bruce Lee trying to do karate kicks on me and shit. I'm like, God bless every one of you. You have made my night.
He karate kicks him. He just flies across the set in slow motion. And
Jesus.
The Lord should have never gave you guys money.
And then my personal favorite was always the World Series of Dice.
Oh
to go from
my God! I'm
ashy
about
to
to go
classy.
from ashy to classy.
And it's just like, oh, Snake Eyes. Oh, she's gonna kill me. And it's like, who's he talking about? His wife comes up. "Larry, what the fuck are you doing with my money?"
And he comes down. Everybody, like I said, get butt naked. Looks at him. Put some lotion on.
And then I just love how he had to bring that back with his bodyguard when he kept getting held up. And it's just like, all right, now both of you get butt naked. All right, you know what? When we get out of this, you fucking fired. Guess what? When we get out of this, you're in trouble, Jack. Y'all can just let him threaten me like that? How am I supposed to give you your money if I got John Coffey from the Green Mile sitting on the middle of K Street? And then he shoots him. He falls down to the ground, and Dave Chappelle's like trying to comfort him in his last moment. He goes, "Money, the root of all evil. Bullets didn't do this. Your greed did this to me, Dave." There's only one way to keep the show fresh. You gotta. I'm dead.
Kiss my ass 2 times.
I need to stop before it gets out of hand. But as far as
or before the entirety of this podcast is just us reminiscing about how much we love Chappelle's show.
Yeah.
There are a lot more things on the docket.
Before
I
someone
will admit, it's deserved.
Before someone else has to scream, "Hey yo, shut the fuck up!"
Oh God, jeez.
It is my favorite TV show of all time.
I own the collection on DVD. Like,
there is not an episode that I disliked.
Yeah.
There's maybe a skit that I just wasn't so hot on as much as the rest of it, but it's a masterpiece, honestly.
Yeah.
And he is the best. He's the GOAT. He's the greatest of all time.
Yeah.
And even if he has a few recent jokes that aren't as good or wise, I think of all people, even though I'm not a fan of this guy, of all people, Joe Rogan said it best. He has like a tall tale myth about him where like
maybe it was just a hallucination on DMT.
He was at the top of the world, and he had like the most popular thing, and he had all the money in the world, and he just walked away from it, and he disappeared, and he went to another country, and then he came back, he returned, and it was like he's almost like a character from a book.
Yeah.
You know, he's like a legend or something. And
Prophet had to disappear for 10 years.
And I just loved how, you know, the first episode of Saturday Night Live after the 2016 election, he hosted it, and it was like when America needed him most, he returned, and it was amazing. I think that was a really good point. He's almost like a character from a book. It's like a tall tale guy.
Yeah.
And it's just I love this show, and I mean honestly, like it deserves an episode of its own of just our top favorite skits. But I mean the Tupac skit, and that was in the Lost Episodes.
Yep.
That's actually my mom and sister's personal favorite. It's just you ordered a gin and tonic, but you didn't even tip, and if you hit this table one more time, then it just might skip. I told you stop hitting the table. Like,
and I love how like by the end of it, he's fucking cock blocking Dave from the grave.
Yeah.
Dave Chappelle, that ain't your wife. Go home.
Got 3. Dave Chappelle got 2 kids.
Oh.
We'll run up on your spot like CJ from San Andreas.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
To help move it along, even though I do like staying at this topic, because it's my favorite.
Yeah, great show.
Donnie,
but
bring us to the
next TV show that started in 2003, Mythbusters. This was a show that was a guilty pleasure of mine for many, many years. Like I watched,
it is not a guilty pleasure of mine.
I followed the show religiously for like most of its run. It was just a cool show, and it just had like cool people presenting it, and just some of the myths that they tackled were just like really interesting. And it's just like it really looked at like a lot of stuff that we like took for granted about the world around us, and be like, hey, it's actually not that way, which was pretty cool. What do you guys got to say about Mythbusters?
Mythbusters was one of my favorite TV shows. In fact, the fact that it's on Hulu, granted, not every episode, which irritates me, but the fact that it is on Hulu and I can pop on and watch it whenever I want, play it in the background, as a calming background noise while I'm doing something, or if I just want to sit down, eat my meal, and watch it. It just makes me happy. I like the chemistry between Adam Savage and
Jamie
Hyneman. Yep, it was coming to me. Adam Savage, Jamie Hyneman. I love the dichotomy of their personalities. It reminds me of a few different friends of mine, with me. I think the other thing that not a lot of, or I don't hear a lot of people say it, but to me, Mythbusters was actually more than just Jamie Hyneman and Adam Savage. It was Tori Belleci, Grant Imahara, and Carrie Byron.
Mm-hmm.
I loved how they would tackle two myths at once, and they would split up into the team of 3 and the team of 2.
Mm-hmm.
Now, granted, we did lose one of them, and I really that hit a good bit, and I was really saddened by that. But overall, that was one of my favorite shows. Like, it got me interested in science. Like, it was one of those things where it's like, I'm really interested, I want to learn, but God knows that will never be a profession of mine.
Blake?
I have not seen a single episode.
Really?
For the longest time, I went by believing that those two guys were brothers. And then when you told me they weren't brothers, I was like, oh. Because they look like they could be related in a weird way, though, I guess. But
like
yeah,
cousins.
I guess, but yeah. And I do know that it was, I don't think I can count how many times Donnie and I have been sitting down watching the movie, and they would do a bullshit logic, like, leap of faith, like, stunt, and Donnie would just go, next on Mythbusters. I think the one time he was so broken he couldn't say it was when we were watching The Hobbit, the Battle of the Five Armies, when all the rubble from the bridge is falling, and Legolas just jumps on one piece of rubble one by one in midair, and instead of doing next on Mythbusters, you just scream, "Yeah, okay." Even for a Middle Earth movie, it was like, nah. But anyway,
my favorite episodes with Mythbusters was when they had like a few episodes where they would test like old sayings, like, the Rolling Stone gathers.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. They had another one was you can't teach an old dog new tricks, and they like legit found like a couple older dogs that had never been trained and taught them, trained them very well. Like, episodes like that were cool. There was another cool one where they, tested like different ways to, like, if you're driving a car and you fall into like the car crashes into a lake or whatever and you're sinking, like, what's a good way to get out of the car?
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, just and that
they used
episode
that school's pool for multiple episodes, actually.
Yeah, and that episode like ended up saving some lives. So
yeah, I remember they revisited that.
Yeah.
In like very future episodes.
So yeah, just a cool show overall.
Oh yeah.
Move on to the next show, the 2003 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoon. I didn't really watch it too much. I watched this cartoon religiously every fucking Saturday on the Fox box. Every Saturday morning, from the beginning of this show to the end of this show, I watched it. It was an awesome fucking show. In my opinion, I mean, I haven't watched any of the newer Ninja Turtles cartoons in the past couple years, but this is the coolest Ninja Turtles cartoon. It is head and shoulders better than that like classic one from like the 80s and 90s. I mean, it's just a very badass and mature cartoon. It wasn't afraid to get violent either. And like what's interesting about this show is because, the Ninja Turtles, like, if you were a kid in the 90s, like before Pokemon, you automatically liked Ninja Turtles. Like, that was like a given. If you were a kid in like the early to mid 90s, you loved the Ninja Turtles. And then by like the mid to late 90s, they just kind of disappeared. And they were gone for a while. And then this show just brought them back out of nowhere. and it was such a huge hit, and like it revitalized the franchise. But it was just such a cool fucking show, and what was nice was it took like bits and pieces from like all previous media of Ninja Turtles. Like it would take some from the live action movies, some from the original comics, some from like the old cartoon, and then it would have some stuff of its own. And they even did like a TV movie where like the 2003 Turtles met like the 80s Turtles, which was pretty cool. What do you guys got to say about this cartoon?
Yeah, I'm not a Ninja Turtles fan at all, really. But I watched this for maybe like a whole season straight. And yeah, it is better than, I mean, the 1987 cartoon is just
nostalgia.
It's nostalgia. I mean, people watch it with their nostalgia goggles, their rose-colored glasses.
Mm-hmm. It's juice box of Ecto Cooler.
Yeah, like it is romanticized, and it is charming, and you have to give it credit for it really made it is the thing that made it mainstream. Like it came after the comic, but like it wasn't in every household until that cartoon. You have to give it that credit.
Yeah.
But it's, you watch it now, it's so dated.
Yeah.
And you can't just be like, oh yeah, what do you expect? It's from the 80s. Like there's plenty of other stuff from the 80s that isn't dated yet. I guess cartoon, every cartoon from the 80s, maybe you can make that argument, but no, this is from a narrative, from an actual, plot progression point of view, from a character developing point of view, like the 2003 show is superior. And that's coming from someone who isn't biased. So yeah, no, it gets my thumb.
Zach?
So I remember when this premiered a lot on Cartoon Network. I think it was it had to have been Cartoon Network.
No, it was on the Fox box.
Yeah.
I have a distinct feeling that it was on Cartoon Network at some point. Maybe after they'd gotten like, you know what I mean? Like they progressed so far on Fox box that Cartoon Network picked up the rights to show it, and like
syndication.
Syndication. Yeah.
Yeah, they probably got the reruns.
Like if I had started it at the point in time where it had kicked in, you probably would have been like 4 seasons ahead of me, kind of thing. But I digress. I don't remember too much about it because it was one of those shows that, for some reason, it just didn't keep a hold of me. I don't know. I liked the concepts of the characters that had different wait for it, it's on the tip of my tongue, personalities. They had different personalities. They had different shticks. They had they had that thing that made them them.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to see how they interacted. They were all heroes. It was a really cool, obviously really cool concept. I like how they portrayed it, where they made it just a little bit, a little bit darker,
mm-hmm.
and still kept that. It's still Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It's a little darker. I don't know why it never could draw me in the way other things did, but I mean, what I saw was decent. That's all I can say.
All right, well, let's move on to our next TV show that started in 2003, Punk'd. This goes on the list along with Fear Factor and Jackass of things that shouldn't have come out when they did, in terms of just how many kids were watching this that shouldn't have been. Yeah, I remember seeing Punk'd and really just watching Punk'd. You weren't really watching people watching it for the pranks. You were watching it to you were really wondering if it was going to be the last time you were going to see Ashton Kutcher alive.
It was almost like it was Schrodinger's snuff film.
What?
Okay, first off, do you know what a Schrodinger's cat is?
No.
Okay, it's a concept where you take a cat, you put it in a box, and theoretically, the cat because you know that there's a cat in the box, but because you can't see the cat now does exist and now does not exist. It's one of those things, it's complicated as shit. I have not the mental fortitude to go into it, unless you want me to look it up on Google here. But to me, that's a Schrodinger snuff film. It has all the, the markings of that man about to die, that man about to get his ass kicked. You're just waiting to see if it happens or not.
That's an interesting assessment.
Yeah.
Now, see, when you compared it to Jackass, quite frankly, I would have taken Jackass any day of the week over Punk'd.
Well, at least in Jackass, everybody was in on the joke.
Yeah, well, then again, at least in Jackass, if one of them was acting douchey, you knew at some point it was going to get turned around on them.
Yeah.
Instant karma. That never happened to Ashton Kutcher, and he slowly became more and more of the classic douchebag with the backwards cowboy hat. Oh man, we're gonna really just punk him real hard.
A backwards cowboy hat?
No, wait, did I say cowboy hat? I meant trucker hat. You see how tired I am right now? I'm running on caffeine, spite, and the will to stay awake.
Blake, what do you got to say about Punk'd?
I never watched it. I think Ashton Kutcher, once again, I'm not going by how he acted in any of these episodes, but I actually personally like him. I think, in real life, later on, he's proved to be a decent person.
Mm-hmm.
But I do have one specific memory, which was, and this was, Punk'd was going on while he was dating Demi Moore, and that was like such a big thing in like pop culture and like the tabloids and stuff. And Demi Moore was famously married to Bruce Willis, but since they had kids together, they still had a decent friendship. They co-parented well.
Mm-hmm.
So because of that, Ashton Kutcher had to be around Bruce Willis for holidays, and
that honestly made me uncomfortable.
Two people you would never put in the same room with each other. And there was an opening of a Punk'd episode where Ashton Kutcher is like doing like a candid video journal where it's black and white and stuff, and he's like, ever since the show I don't have any friends anymore. I just have Demi and Bruce. I swear to God, if I have to watch Die Hard one more fucking time. So that's my specific memory of the show.
All right. Well, our last...
You mentioned not putting the people in the same room. I'm thinking to myself, no, they're people who wouldn't sit at the same Thanksgiving table.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on to our last TV show that started in 2003, the Teen Titans cartoon.
Oh, dear God.
This cartoon was pretty fucking cool. Like, I didn't watch it religiously, but it was pretty fucking cool. It was a little different than your typical like superhero cartoon, and it just had a cool cast of characters. So you know what, Zach, you seem like you got a lot to say about the show. Why don't you go ahead?
I really liked it. I really liked its dark tone. I really liked how, as much as it wanted to be the whole DC style campy, that it showed it at times, but they wanted to give it a very realistic approach. Mm-hmm. The world isn't always campy and fun and jokes. It's heavy themes. Mm-hmm. It's dealing with loss. It's dealing with betrayal. It's dealing with fitting in. And I really did like that. Not to mention the fact that, Jesus on God, Starfire and Raven, my God.
Oh, wow.
10 out of 10. 10 out of 10. They make my heart just explode. But that's where that ends.
It's a fucking cartoon, man.
Hey, their voices were very nice.
All right,
not
Blake,
in the sequel.
Ahead.
They're cartoons.
You leave that fucking sequel out of this. I swear to God, it is only meant for one thing, and it's the wood chipper.
The Teen Titans Go.
Yeah, it's not good.
I
It's
haven't.
not good.
I saw I took my nephew to see Teen Titans Go to the movies, and it was actually funny though, honestly, for what it was.
Now, granted, my friend John Rose, he is a lot more forgiving and a lot more objective when it comes to movies than I am. He said the same thing. He said the exact same thing. Me, on the other hand, I'm like, I still won't forgive you for turning Robin into the punchline of every joke, or trying to become the comedian for every joke or the punchline for every joke. It was really really good dichotomy here, and I think I think Donnie could back me up on this one. Chappelle's show can do fart and poop jokes at a really nice pace, in really nice timing, and it doesn't seem forced. It doesn't seem like, okay, all right, fart joke, poop joke, No, they really got you like holding your sides, going, where's this guy getting this? Why is this funny? Teen Titans Go, on the other hand, oh god, it's like, well, instant cancer. Don't stand out in the sun for hours on end. Just watch a few episodes of Teen Titans Go. You'll get all of it you need.
All right, let's move on. Let's move on.
But no, hold on. Overall, Teen Titans, good show. That's all I was ending it with. Jeez.
All right.
Bruh.
Let's move on to TV shows that ended in 2003. I'm just going to run through them here real quick because there's only 3 of them.
Oh, okay.
We're also getting close to 3 hours on this.
All right, hey, run through them. Come on, let's jog. Let's do this.
All right, shows that ended in 2003. Dragon Ball Z, I mean, at least the U.S. airing anyway, ended over here, which, of course, it had ended like 10 years prior in Japan.
And by ended, you mean played the same episode on repeat because they couldn't get the dubs in quick enough?
Pretty much. I mean, Dragon Ball Z, that was a show I fucking ate up at this time, at this age.
Same, actually.
Yeah, like, you know, when you were a preteen, teenage boy, like, Dragon Ball Z was just the epitome of fucking cool.
Yeah.
There's really no other way to put it. Another show that ended this year was Futurama, which was a very underrated show, and I mean, it ended because, in all honesty, just because Fox killed it purposely, just to give the middle finger to Matt Groening. I mean, there are so many classic episodes of Futurama that are just so good, so funny, so well written.
People don't let you forget about it.
Yeah. I mean, I still love The Simpsons much, much more, but Futurama is a good show. And
I know.
I'm always a little disappointed about how Futurama's been treated. Like, I feel like Futurama should still be on, personally, because I mean, it got jerked around by Fox, and then Comedy Central brought it back and just ended it unceremoniously, just out of nowhere. Last show on my list that ended in 2003, Dexter's Laboratory, which that show ending, like, I wasn't a huge fan of it. I watched it here and there growing up, but that show ending was like, I remember that being the first time I realized, like, wow, I'm like, actually, I'm not getting old, but I'm growing up, because, you know, this was when, like, the shows that I literally watched as a small child were starting to come to an end. And it was like the first moment where I realized, wow, I'm getting a bit old. I'm growing up a little bit now. So, you know, what do you guys got to say about those shows or any other shows that you might remember?
DBZ, I remember watching Toonami a lot. I watched Toonami religiously. Any of the animes that they would bring up, I would eat it up, because, you know, it was compelling storytelling and all that. DBZ, I wanted to get involved, but every time I did, they would bring me up to a certain point, and then they would all of a sudden jump like 10 episodes back to give, you know, Funimation time to get the dubs back out, or the dubbed episodes back out. And it would annoy me, because I remember specifically there was the thing in there called the Garlic Jr. Saga, I think it was.
Yeah.
And we got all the way 2 episodes before it was supposed to end. They ran out of episodes, and then they went all the way back to the beginning. And I went, nope, I ain't going to do this. And then I never watched an episode after that since. I got frustrated. I went back for the Boo Saga, then they did it to me again during the Boo Saga. I was done. Futurama, never really watched it. I had other things. I got I am a very easily distracted individual, if you haven't already known throughout the whole rest of this podcast. But, I mean, from the episodes I have sat down and watched, decent. Liked them. I wish I could have given it a chance, but, what are you going to do? Dexter's Lab, that one hurt for the same reason that Donnie said. Because not only did that one end, slowly, one by one, everything from Cartoon Fridays was dying off.
Mm-hmm.
And it was Dexter's Laboratory, and then it was Johnny Bravo, and then, it was Powerpuff Girls, and then all of a sudden, my favorite, Courage the Cowardly Dog, died off, and that broke my heart, and then that broke way to weird Cartoon Network. Granted, I appreciated weird Cartoon Network a little more when I was older, like, for example, Misadventures of Flapjack, and, my favorite, Chowder. Chowder was an acid trip and a half, and I loved it.
Flapjack was a fucking demented cartoon.
No, that one was like a teacup full of ayahuasca.
What?
Magic mushrooms. You're gonna trip really hard, and it's not gonna be fun.
Blake, what do you got to say about these shows?
Oh,
You doing a chant there?
He just took some ayahuasca.
Well, have fun watching have fun watching Flapjack.
I was pretty into Dragon Ball Z at the time, and then I think it should have just ended with the Cell Saga. I thought that was a better ending to the series than the Boo Saga, but I still watch the Boo Saga, and I don't think I've seen every single episode. I watched most of it, and I came in I really started watching it consistently when the Android Saga was airing on TV over here, and then I basically had to go back and finally see the Frieza Saga. Saiyan Saga is the most boring, I think. It's just one big prologue for the Frieza Saga, really.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
But having said all that, I don't plan on ever going back and rewatching it just because it would feel like such a chore. And it would just be so time consuming, honestly. But and then what were the other ones you said, Donnie?
Futurama and Dexter's Laboratory.
Oh, Futurama's pretty good. I haven't seen too much of it, but we've watched a few episodes, and we started watching it from the start, didn't we? And then we just kind of dropped it and never picked back up.
Yeah.
But no, it's great. And then Dexter's Lab. I feel like Dexter's Lab ended before that, though. I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just being me personally, I felt like it had been done already. It felt like
I thought the same thing. I was surprised when I looked this up and saw that it ended in 2003, but
they must have been doing that thing where there was only one new episode every so often, because it just didn't feel like it was consistently still on.
Yeah. Which, fun fact I forgot to mention about Dexter's Laboratory, the voice actor for Mandark is actually a native of our hometown here.
Yep.
Eddie Deason.
And he visits every so often.
His mama still lives here.
Yeah.
There, I should say.
My mom actually knows his mom.
She came to the. I bumped into her at the theaters a few times. She is so nice. She's a sweetheart. So yeah. But Dexter's Lab. Did it end with the Ego Trip movie, or was
I think so.
That was good for a TV movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, was that the one where he teamed up with all his future iterations?
Yeah.
I loved that.
Yeah, that was awesome. So yeah, I think I'll definitely have to watch more Futurama here and there now and then as something to have on in the background.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I gotta say.
All right, well, let's move on to our final topic for the evening, video games of 2003. Again, I'm just going to run through the list here since we're running kind of long, and then we'll.
My favorites. One of my favorites is on this list.
Well, I'll just run through the list here, and then we'll discuss them as a whole afterwards. First game, Tony Hawk's Underground, came out in 2003. This was right after the Pro Skater games, which were just completely groundbreaking and so fucking popular. And this was still like at the height of the skateboarding craze. Underground 2 was a much better game, which we'll talk about in a future episode. But I remember Underground being like, it really was like very different from the previous Tony Hawk games, and it was just a very fun game overall. Star Wars: Knights of the Old Republic. Everybody ate this fucking game up. I remember seeing this game advertised everywhere. This game was basically kind of what people wanted out of the prequel trilogy that they didn't get. It was just a fucking wild game, and even more so with Knights of the Old Republic too. But yeah, those games like advertised
Good
fucking
stuff.
everywhere. Final Fantasy X-2 was. I mentioned before, Final Fantasy X is my favorite game of all time. Final Fantasy X was also the first Final Fantasy to get a direct sequel, because typically in Final Fantasy, the next game has nothing to do with any of the other games.
Yeah.
X-2 came out, and I was so pumped because I was like, oh, fuck yeah, more. And it's not a bad game, but it is not a worthy successor to Final Fantasy X. It's very lazy. It honestly would have been better if it had just been an entirely different game altogether, and didn't have like the Final Fantasy name and universe attached. Final Fantasy X name and universe attached to it. Another game that came out in 2003 was Jak 2, which Jak and Daxter had come out like the previous year or 2 years before, and Jak 2. Because Jak and Daxter was kind of similar to Crash Bandicoot because it was like the first game Naughty Dog did after Crash Bandicoot. Jak 2 had a completely different like tone and look and just gameplay and everything, like complete left turn in comparison to the previous game. And I just remember that game, like that was another game that everybody fucking ate up. Another game that like is a favorite of all three of us, The Simpsons.
Oh boy,
Simpsons Hit and Run.
yeah, man.
If you love The Simpsons like I do, like this game's just a fucking treat from beginning to end. And even if you're not a huge fan of The Simpsons, this is just a fun fucking game and with tons of jokes in it. It's just it's a clever game, it's a fun game, and it still holds up to this day. Every now and then I gotta break it out and play it. And then the last game, Enter the Matrix. I played this game once. Like I was at like a get together and like a friend of a friend brought it and like I played like the first level or two and I was like, this is kind of cool. But other than that, I don't have anything to say about that game. What do you guys got to say about these games, Zach?
Okay. Well, unfortunately, I think like 3 of these games I could say I didn't play.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't really interested in skateboarding games, so Tony Hawk's Underground is off the table for me.
All right.
Final Fantasy, I never played. There's only one Final Fantasy I think I've ever played, and that was Final Fantasy 3 for the 3DS.
Okay.
That was it. To me, it seemed like my first impression when I saw Final Fantasy Final Fantasy X had a sequel. All of the advertisements for it didn't make it look like a game. It looked like it was a game created as a love letter to the artist who did the music for it.
Yeah. That
was it. And I was like, but that... Okay, all right. I mean, I'm waiting for it to be the Final Fantasy, but, you do you, boo. Jak 2 I never played because I didn't have a PS2 at the time. So I never had access to it.
Okay.
But KOTOR, I ended up getting... I actually played the second KOTOR first. Loved the shit out of it. Blake came to me later and said that he had... What was it? You had an Xbox at one time and then it broke? Was that the story of it?
It didn't break. No. I don't remember the story you're trying to tell, so I can't help you out here. I'm sorry.
Well, no, all I remember was you had a copy of it, and like, why would you have a copy of a game that you don't have a system for?
No, I had an Xbox. Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot completely you had an Xbox, but you ended up going, listen, this really doesn't have a home, and I know you'd enjoy it more than I would at this point. And I went, yes, I don't own that one. And then I played that one, and I loved it just as much as the sequel. Granted, they're both by different developers. One of them is BioWare, which basically created Mass Effect, which was a giant bombshell of a franchise, and then right at the end they shot themselves in the foot. And then after they shot themselves in the foot, they then shot themselves in the femur by getting really, really political and tanking their entire public opinion. Oh, it was sad. It was like watching someone commit very slow seppuku. The other company that made KOTOR 2, that was Obsidian. They went on to make, what was it, Fallout New Vegas, and that is the one that everyone praises as the Jesus Christ of Nazareth of Fallout games. I mean, it's for good reason, but, I mean, after a while it does get a little annoying hearing it over and over again, but I digress. Knights of the Old Republic 1, still a good game. Really love it. Deserves all the hype it got, in my opinion. Simpsons Hit and Run. My parents were very, very sheltering. I hated that. Mm-hmm. But I always wanted to play Grand Theft Auto. Mm-hmm. And apparently, when they went to GameStop, they said, well, I mean, he might like this then. So they got that game for me, I think maybe as a Christmas present, maybe birthday present, probably. And I played it, and I just couldn't stop playing it. Like, that's one of the one games that I 100%ed all the secrets in it. Loved every minute of that game. I felt a drive, no pun intended. I felt a drive to collect every single car.
Yeah.
Because every single car had its own little quirk to it, and it had its own little inside joke. Everything from the monorail to like the grandfather's Jeep to even the what was it? Jeez, even the Mr. Plow. Mm-hmm. And like, I don't even watch The Simpsons religiously as Donnie does, but I know those jokes because of that game. That game was a love letter to what it was trying to be a love letter to. And it was basically, I also think it accomplished a secondary goal of getting people who like video games and maybe haven't watched The Simpsons, get them into The Simpsons by giving them all the inside jokes.
Yeah. And
then a whole bunch of like collector cards explaining the jokes to get you into the show. I'm like, that's a damn good selling tactic.
Which I'm glad you brought up, like the collectibles in the game and 100%ing the game. This was also a game I 100%ed, and like, fun fact, I managed to complete this game because of you, Zack. Because
really?
I remember in middle school we were talking about this game one day, and I mentioned how I was missing one card in the first level, and I couldn't figure out where the hell it was. And you just chime in, just like turn this corner and just like look around like to your right, and it's there. And I went home.
Wait a minute.
I went home, I got it, and that was like the last thing I needed.
Yeah, and it's funny because that's exactly how mine went. And I have someone I think you know of. I think his name is Raymond.
Yeah.
Raymond Sheets.
Yeah.
He was the one who turned me on to that because he was just being sarcastic. He said, "Oh, it's behind a tree," and I thought he was just being a smartass. And I was driving around minding my own business. I crashed my car. I get out
and there it
to
was.
Run away to go steal a new car, and there it was behind a tree. And I about shit brick. But yeah, no, that game got, if it got any of the hype, because I really didn't pay attention, I just played the game. But if that did get any hype, it got every single bit of hype it deserved, and I still believe it deserved more. In fact, I want a re-release of that damn game. I want a re-release.
Yeah.
But Enter the Matrix, oof, that one's interesting, because that one, for example, if you were like me and just wanted to have a good time and you wanted to cheat in video games, they made you work for those cheat codes because they made you put the cheat codes in MS-DOS. Let me tell you how much of a special hell that was. But it was really cool because some of the codes were really, like, some of them were like failed Easter eggs. Like, one of them was, in order for you to play in a certain mission as Morpheus, you had to type in Cowboy Curtis. I thought that was a really cool, like, little head nod. It was a little off-putting because when you play this game, you're expecting to play as Neo or Morpheus or Trinity, and instead you play as what was her name? I don't remember. Niobe. What was it? Naomi? Niobe.
Niobe.
Niobe and Ghost. I always thought Ghost was the most badass, but it really like threw me off. And then when I like really watched the movie, then it all became clear. This was supposed to be shot for shot, or at least, you know, storyline to storyline of what was happening in the background of Matrix Reloaded.
Yeah.
So as you play, like you watch the movie and then you play the game, and then everything in the background starts to make sense. And I ate the shit out of that game. Like, oh my god, I played it. Oh, so good. 10 out of 10. I mean, maybe not a 10 out of 10, but a nostalgic 10 out of 10.
Blake?
I played I think I played Jack 2 just a little bit. I actually played out of the whole Jack like series. I actually played the racing game a lot, which I thought was really fun. But I'm actually kind of bummed out that I didn't play the trilogy. Because I thought it always looked good, and I don't know why I never got around to it. But yeah, and it is interesting how like 2 looks nothing like the first one.
Yeah.
And then they made a third one, which was, you know, more so in line with 2. But yeah, so that's actually one thing I'm actually bummed out with myself, is that I didn't really get into that series more than I could have been at the time. And then Enter the Matrix, the hype and the marketing around the Matrix Reloaded was like so real. And playing that game now, if I were to play, I mean, I haven't played it in like probably 15 years, but like in hindsight, it's an interesting game. The first episode is you shooting up a post office, which, yikes.
Yeah.
Yeah, right?
But yeah, no, it's basically a companion film to The Matrix Reloaded. It starts right before and it starts right after. Well, it's a sequel to one of the chapters in the Animatrix anthology, which is the final flight of the Osiris or whatever.
Final Flight of the Osiris?
Yeah. And like the first level in Enter the Matrix is you dealing with a package that was sent at the end of...
Yeah, you're basically picking up the flight recorder, the black box of the Osiris.
So, and I understand all this is just noise to you right now, Donnie, but like they were really trying to build this universe. They were really trying to, like, you know, just really story build and world build here, which is weird considering like they had both the second and the third movie in the trilogy come out the same year. So it's like, if you really want to cement this as a franchise, or as like the, you know, one of the great trilogies of the decade, why are you rushing it? Like, why are you making it like be over before, you know, it, like, you can really pick up more of a fan base? Like, I to this day, I still don't know why they didn't have the Matrix Revolutions come out a few years later, just to work on it a little bit more. And like, also, it's like, imagine if like the Harry Potter franchise only lasted like 4 or 5 years. Like, that's weird.
Yeah.
So it's making it a little too broad, but moving on. The Simpsons Hit and Run. I remember Zack gave this to me as a birthday present. The following year, it was 2004, but because Zack and I had really started being friends like towards the end of 2003, and then, you know, so we had become friends after my birthday of that year, and he gave me Hit and Run as my gift. And I went home and I played it, and it was just so fun. It's just such a fun game. I would honestly, I would love for us to do a playthrough of this sometime, even.
Oh, definitely.
Um, and yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
like the inside jokes and it's just such a and I was always bummed out that they never made a sequel to it. And they made another Simpsons game afterwards, but it wasn't like in the exact same vein. Because I was like, the one thing I gotta do, I mean, just for the sake of criticism, the one flaw I gotta give it is you can only kick in it. Like you can't like actually fight in it, and you couldn't do weapons or whatever. It was just a driving mission game. But it was like, oh, because that was just one thing, like being like, oh, if they made another one, it'd be cool if you could do like guns or weapons in it and stuff.
Mhm.
I mean, obviously not like go into Springfield Elementary and shoot up the place, like that'd be fucked up. But
No. The closest you could get to really messed up shit is just waiting for people to become pedestrians in your path of destruction and just flooring it.
yeah, but I mean, like nothing that would have like been out of the norm for like a Treehouse of Horror episode. Like if you're in The Simpsons and you're fighting aliens and zombies, like why not have a shotgun like Homer did in one episode?
I mean, give the man a laser gun. Come on now.
Yeah. So that's just a critique for the sake of critique, but no, it's an all-time favorite for me growing up. Like it's a childhood favorite. I loved it. It is a nostalgic 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
So.
Well, on that note, we have finished the list. Definitely ran a little long tonight, but it was a good show. I think we covered the year 2003 very well. So on that note, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap it up here tonight. I want to thank you guys for joining me tonight. I want to thank everybody for listening tonight. Definitely, if you tuned in late or if you missed this episode, we will be uploading this on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and Google within the next day or two.
Oh, you fancy, huh?
Oh, hell yeah, baby.
Got that plug.
So I am Don John. You can follow me on Twitter at DonJohnLaughs. Also, I have a show in Hagerstown coming up on Saturday the 26th at CNO Taco. I will be performing stand-up there at 9:30, so be sure to check that out if you are in the area. I want to thank our special guest, Zack Kogel, for joining us tonight. You can find him on Twitter as well, at Gilzilla. Also, ladies, he's single. He's one of the funniest men I know, and he's got a big old horse cock.
Excuse me? What? That was an odd turn. I'm so glad I was about to say, don't follow me. I'm not family friendly. I think that summed it up pretty well.
Did you check your rearview mirror before that turn?
And, of course, you can follow Blake at Puka Saucy on Twitter, and he's got some new art coming out. So definitely
Yes, I do, yes.
Definitely be sure to follow him so you don't miss any of that. So on that note, thank you guys for joining me. Thank you guys at home for listening. Good night, and be safe.
Good night.
Good night, and good luck.